Howard Brennan slammed his fist on the mahogany desk so hard the coffee cups rattled. I want that crippled soldier gone by Christmas. His uncle hid something on that property for 60 years, and I will not let some limping nobody steal what my father spent his entire life trying to get. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Howard the man is a decorated Navy SEAL, a war hero, if we push too hard. I don't care if he's Captain America. My father died waiting for that old fool Walter to croak. Now some outsider thinks he can waltz into my town and take what belongs to me. Brennan leaned forward, his eyes cold as granite. Destroy him. His business, his reputation, and if that doesn't work, we go after his daughter. Before you satisfies with this story, please subscribe to the channel and follow Marcus's incredible journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. The Mercedes-Benz rolled through the puddle at 40 miles per hour, sending a wall of muddy water across Marcus Cole's work clothes. Howard Brennan's window came down just enough for his voice to carry over the rain. Hey there, limping hero. Heard you inherited your crazy uncle's junkyard. Maybe now you can finally afford to fix that leg. The window rolled up. The Mercedes disappeared down Main Street. Marcus stood in the parking lot of his failing repair shop, muddy water dripping from his face, and said nothing. His hands didn't shake. His expression didn't change. He'd learned long ago that men like Brennan wanted a reaction, and Marcus Cole had stopped giving people what they wanted somewhere between his third tour in Afghanistan and his wife's funeral. He wiped his face with a shop rag that smelled like motor oil and walked back inside. The garage was cold. The heating had been broken for 2 weeks, and Marcus couldn't afford to fix it. 3 cars waited for repairs he'd promised to complete by Friday, but the parts hadn't arrived because the supplier had cut off his credit. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma's school. Please call regarding Emma's lunch account. Balance negative 4750. Marcus closed his eyes and leaned against the workbench his wife had bought him 7 years ago, back when they'd believed that Steelton, Pennsylvania would be a good place to raise a family. Back when Jessica had been alive and the world had made sense. The bell above the door chimed. We're closed, Marcus said without turning around. Mr. Marcus Cole. The voice was professional, female, the kind of voice that delivered news you didn't want to hear. Marcus turned to find a woman in her mid-30s standing in his doorway. Sharp suit, expensive briefcase. Government plates on the black sedan visible through the window behind her. I'm Jennifer Walsh, attorney with Walsh & Associates. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. I'm here about your great-uncle Walter Raymond Cole. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Uncle Walter. The old man he'd met exactly twice in 34 years of life. What about him? I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Cole passed away 9 days ago, peacefully in his sleep. Jennifer set her briefcase on the nearest workbench and opened it with practiced efficiency. He was 91 years old. Marcus processed this information the way he'd learned to process everything since coming home from the war. File it away, deal with the emotions later, focus on facts. I barely knew him. Nevertheless, he knew you. Jennifer produced a thick folder. Mr. Cole left very specific instructions regarding his estate. He named you as his sole beneficiary. His estate? His property on Route 19, the garage and surrounding 12 acres. Marcus almost laughed. He'd seen Walter's garage exactly once from a distance, a crumbling structure surrounded by weeds and chain-link fence. The place had been closed for as long as anyone in Steelton could remember. There are complications, Jennifer continued. Outstanding property taxes totaling $47,000. The county has been patient, but they'll require resolution within 90 days or the property goes to auction. $47,000. Marcus had $312 in his checking account and a maxed-out credit card he'd used to buy Emma's school supplies in August. I should also give you this. Jennifer handed him an envelope yellowed with age, his name written on the front in careful script. Mr. Cole's instructions were explicit. You're to read this letter before visiting the property. Marcus took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should feel. One more thing. Jennifer paused at the door. Mr. Cole also left a message. He asked me to tell you, and I quote, the boy has good hands. He'll know what to do. She left without waiting for a response. Marcus stood alone in his freezing garage holding an envelope from a dead man he barely knew inheriting a property he couldn't afford to keep in a town that had never wanted him in the first place. His phone buzzed again. Another text. Daddy, I forgot my lunch money again. Mrs. Patterson said I can't eat until the account is fixed. Marcus closed his eyes and made a decision he'd been avoiding for months. He would sell everything. The garage, the equipment, whatever Walter had left him. He would take Emma and leave Steelton forever. But first he would read the letter. The nightmare came at 3:47 a.m., same as always. Marcus bolted upright in bed, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. His heart slammed against his ribs. Sweat soaked through his t-shirt. In the darkness of his cramped bedroom, every shadow looked like a Taliban fighter, and every creak of the old house sounded like incoming fire. "Daddy?" Emma's voice cut through the panic. She stood in the doorway, clutching the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 3, her dark hair tangled from sleep. "Hey, baby girl?" Marcus forced his breathing to slow. "Bad dream. Go back to bed." "The war dream?" "Yeah, the war dream." Emma crossed the room and climbed onto his bed, something she'd been doing since her mother died. At 9 years old, she understood more about loss and fear than any child should. "Mommy used to sing to you when you had bad dreams." "I remember." "I could try, but I don't sing as good as she did." Marcus pulled his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of the cheap shampoo he bought in bulk when it went on sale. Jessica had been gone 4 years now, killed by a drunk driver on Route 19 while Marcus was deployed in Syria. He'd come home to bury his wife and raise their daughter alone in a town that had never accepted either of them. "You don't have to take care of me, Em. That's my job." "We take care of each other." Emma pressed her face against his chest. "That's what Mom said. Family takes care of family." They sat together in the darkness until Emma's breathing slowed and she fell asleep in his arms. Marcus carried her back to her room, tucked the elephant beside her, and returned to his bed, knowing he wouldn't sleep again tonight. The envelope from Walter waited on his nightstand. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, and finally broke the seal. Inside was a single page and a brass key. "Marcus," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably wondering why a crazy old man left you his pile of junk. I've watched you from a distance these past years. I saw how you handled Jessica's death, how you raise Emma alone, how you work 18-hour days and still can't make ends meet, how this town treats you like something stuck to their shoe. You remind me of myself 60 years ago, a soldier who came home to a country that didn't know what to do with him. The garage holds more than it appears. Look for the brass key taped under the third workbench drawer. When you find what I've hidden, you'll understand why I couldn't sell it, couldn't show it, couldn't trust anyone with the truth. But I trust you. Some treasures are meant to heal wounds, not fill pockets. The town needs what I've saved. More importantly, you need it. Both of you do. Don't let them tear it down. Don't let them win. They took everything from me once. Don't let them take it again. Your Uncle Walter. P.S. When you meet the resistance, and you will remember the truth is in the filing cabinet. Third drawer. Folder marked Betrayal. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he looked at the brass key in his palm and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. The morning sun revealed Steelton in all its faded glory as Marcus drove toward Route 19. Once this had been a proud steel town, the kind of place where 3 generations worked the same mill, where Friday nights meant high school football and Sunday mornings meant packed churches. 4,000 people had worked at the Steelton Steelworks at its peak. The smokestacks had painted the sky gray, but nobody complained. Because gray meant paychecks. That was before. Now the mill sat rusted and silent. Half the storefronts downtown were boarded up. The high school football team had been cut for lack of funding. Young people fled for cities that still had jobs, and old people stayed because they had nowhere else to go. Marcus had come to Steelton because of Jessica. This was her hometown. When she'd gotten pregnant with Emma, she'd wanted to raise their daughter here, surrounded by family and tradition. But Jessica's parents had died before Emma was born. Her extended family had scattered, and Marcus, a foster kid from San Diego with no family of his own, had inherited a town that tolerated him but never accepted him. The outsider, the Californian, the veteran who came home broken. He pulled his battered Ford F-150 onto Route 19 and followed the winding road until he reached Walter's property. The place was larger than he remembered. 6 service bays, a 2-story office section, old oak trees that had grown wild over decades of neglect. Chain-link fence topped with barbed wire surrounded the entire property, and 3 separate no trespassing signs warned away the curious. The locks were military grade. The security system, though old, was professional. Marcus used the key Jennifer Walsh had given him and stepped inside. He expected dust, cobwebs, the musty smell of abandonment. Instead, he found order. 6 hydraulic lifts in perfect working condition, tool chests organized with surgical precision, workbenches worn smooth by decades of use but clean enough to eat off. The concrete floor had been painted and maintained. The windows were spotless. Someone had been caring for this place. Recently. Marcus found the 3rd workbench against the back wall. Top drawer organized wrenches. 2nd drawer precision instruments. 3rd drawer stuck slightly. He reached underneath and felt tape. and beneath the tape a key that matched the one from Walter's letter. Now he needed to find what it opened. It took him 20 minutes. The hidden door was nearly invisible, a section of concrete blocks that matched its surroundings so perfectly that Marcus only found it by running his hands along every wall, feeling for inconsistencies. The brass key fit a lock concealed behind a loose block at shoulder height. When he turned it, he heard the heavy click of industrial tumblers falling into place. The wall swung inward on silent hinges, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Marcus pulled out his phone and activated the flashlight. 22 steps down. He counted automatically, the habit of a man who'd spent years clearing buildings in hostile territory. At the bottom, his flashlight swept across shapes, covered shapes, arranged in rows like soldiers standing at attention. He found the light switch, and the world changed. Fluorescent lights hummed to life, illuminating an underground vault the size of a football field. Climate control units whispered and whispered from every corner. The air smelled of leather polish and history. 37 automobiles, each one covered, each one waiting. Marcus approached the nearest vehicle and lifted the cover with hands that had started to tremble. A 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, Rosso Corsa Red, the most valuable Ferrari ever built. He moved to the next cover, a 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, silver with red leather interior. The next, a 1938 Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic, one of only 4 in existence. The next, a 1965 Shelby Daytona coupe prototype that the automotive world believed had been destroyed in a fire 50 years ago. Marcus walked the rows in silence, lifting cover after cover, each reveal more impossible than the last. A 1957 Ferrari 250 Testarossa, a 1961 Jaguar E-Type, a 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport, a 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV. At the back of the vault, he found Walter's office. A desk, filing cabinets, walls covered with photographs and certificates of authenticity. A leather-bound ledger lay open on the desk. Marcus read the final entry. Collection complete, 37 vehicles. Total estimated value $175,000. Now I wait for the one who will understand. Marcus sat down in Walter's chair. $175 million. He'd earned $32,000 last year. He couldn't afford lunch money for his daughter, and beneath his feet sat a fortune that could buy a small country, but Walter's words echoed in his mind. Don't let them win. They took everything from me once. Who were they? What had they taken? And why had Walter spent 50 years hiding instead of selling even one car to live comfortably? Marcus remembered the postscript. The truth is in the filing cabinet, 3rd drawer, folder marked Betrayal. He found the cabinet, found the drawer, found the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, and newspaper clippings dating back to 1968. And as Marcus read, the history of Steelton revealed itself to be something far darker than he'd ever imagined. In 1968, Walter Cole had returned from a successful career as an automotive engineer in Detroit. He'd made his fortune designing engines for Ford during the muscle car era, and he'd spent years quietly acquiring classic automobiles. He'd come home to Steelton with a vision: the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center, a training facility where returning Vietnam veterans could learn restoration skills, find purpose, and rebuild their lives. Walter had presented his plan to the town council in October 1968. He'd offered to donate the land, fund construction, and provide operating expenses for 10 years. The vote was unanimous. Against. But it wasn't the rejection that destroyed Walter. It was who led the opposition. Howard Brennan Sr., father of the man who'd splashed Marcus with muddy water yesterday. In 1968, Brennan Sr. had been the town's most prominent developer, with plans to build a shopping center on the exact property Walter owned. The documents revealed the rest. Brennan Sr. had bribed 3 council members. He'd spread rumors that Walter was mentally unstable. He'd arranged for the local newspaper to run stories questioning Walter's sanity. But his cruelest move came last. Walter had been engaged to a woman named Elizabeth Harmon. After Brennan's smear campaign, Elizabeth's parents had forbidden the marriage. They didn't want their daughter associated with the crazy car man. Elizabeth had chosen her family. Walter never married, never had children, never trusted Steelton again. The final document in the folder was a letter from Elizabeth Harmon dated 1989. Dearest Walter, I've never forgiven myself for choosing wrong. I've never stopped loving you. Howard Brennan destroyed us both, and I've hated him every day since. I'm dying now. Cancer. I need you to know he's planning something. His son is worse than he was. They want your land, Walter. They've always wanted your land. Whatever you're protecting in that garage, don't let the Brennans take it. I should have chosen you. I should have been brave. Forever yours, Elizabeth. Walter had kept Elizabeth's letter for 35 years. Marcus set down the folder and stared at the concrete wall. 60 years. The Brennan family had been circling this property for 60 years, waiting for Walter to die so they could finally claim what they'd always wanted. And now Marcus Cole, a struggling mechanic with a bad leg and a 9-year-old daughter, stood between them and $175 million. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Cole. A man's voice, deep, confident. My name is Victor Ashworth. I represent several serious collectors who are very interested in your recent acquisition. I'd like to meet with you this afternoon to discuss a potential transaction. Marcus stared at the phone. News traveled fast. How did you know about this swim? Word spreads quickly in our community, Mr. Cole. Your uncle was something of a legend. The collector who never sold, never showed, never shared. We've been waiting decades for this moment. Waiting for him to die, you mean? A pause, then a careful laugh. Waiting for an opportunity to preserve his legacy appropriately. Those automobiles deserve to be seen, Mr. Cole, displayed in proper museums, maintained by professional conservators, not hidden in a basement by a veteran mechanic with limited resources. What are you offering? $60 million, cash, immediate transfer upon verification. $60 million. More money than Marcus had ever imagined. Enough to give Emma everything she deserved. Enough to leave Steelton forever and never look back. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. Offers like this have expiration dates. The line went dead. Marcus sat in Walter's chair for a long time, surrounded by $175 million worth of automotive history, thinking about a man who'd waited 60 years for someone to understand his vision. Then he pulled out his phone and called the only person in Steelton who'd ever treated him like he belonged. Sarah, it's Marcus Cole. I need your help. Sarah Chen arrived at Walter's garage 2 hours later, carrying a box of documents and wearing the expression of someone who'd been waiting years for this conversation. She was 42 years old, the town librarian and unofficial historian, with prematurely gray hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She'd been at Jessica's funeral, one of the few mourners who'd seemed genuinely sad rather than merely obligated. I knew this day would come, she said, following Marcus through the hidden door and down into the vault. I just didn't know who would be standing here when it did. Her reaction to the cars was visceral. She gasped. She covered her mouth. She walked among them like a pilgrim in a cathedral. Dear God. Marcus, do you understand what this is? $175 million worth of cars according to Walter's ledger. It's more than that. It's history. Sarah touched the Bugatti's fender with reverent fingers. The Type 57 Atlantic. There are only 4 in existence. This car is worth $50 million by itself. Why are you here, Sarah? How did you know about Walter? Sarah turned to face him. Because I've been researching this town's history for 6 years, and your uncle's name appears in places that most people have forgotten or deliberately ignored. She set her box on Walter's desk and began spreading documents across the surface. Town council minutes, fire department reports, court filings, newspaper clippings. In 1968, Walter Cole proposed something revolutionary, a training center for Vietnam veterans funded by his car collection. The town council rejected it. I found his files. I know about Brennan Sr. Then you know the rejection was rigged. Sarah pointed to a yellowed newspaper clipping. What you might not know is what happened 2 weeks later. There was a fire at Walter's garage. Arson, though it was never prosecuted. 3 cars were destroyed. Walter never mentioned that in his files. Walter didn't document everything, but fires generate investigations, and investigations generate paperwork, and paperwork ends up in archives eventually. Sarah produced another folder. The fire investigator concluded it was deliberately set. He recommended questioning Howard Brennan Sr., but the investigation was closed by the county prosecutor. Who was Howard Brennan Sr.'s brother-in-law. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. 60 years of corruption. 60 years of the same family controlling everything, crushing anyone who threatened their power. The Brennans have been running this town since before I was born, Sarah said. They killed the steel mill's modernization plan because they owned the land it needed to expand. They've blocked every economic development proposal that didn't benefit their real estate holdings, and they've been waiting for Walter to die so they could finally get this property. Then why not go public with this yourself? Sarah's expression shifted. Something haunted moved behind her eyes. Because they destroyed my father. She sat down in the chair across from Walter's desk. My father was Henry Chen. He was the mill foreman in 1987 when the Brennans started lobbying to block the modernization project. He testified at a town council meeting that the mill could survive if it was allowed to upgrade its equipment. 3 days later, he was arrested for embezzlement. Was he guilty? The money appeared in his bank account from nowhere. The evidence was manufactured, but by the time he was cleared, he'd lost everything. His job, his reputation, his health. Sarah's voice cracked. He died 2 years later, heart attack. My mother always said the Brennans killed him. She just couldn't prove it. Marcus studied the woman across from him, the librarian who'd spent years quietly gathering evidence, the daughter who'd never stopped seeking justice for her father. You've been building a case. I've been waiting for someone with standing to use it. Sarah leaned forward. You own the property now, Marcus. You have access to Walter's files. If we combine everything, if we make it public, we could expose the family that's been strangling this town for 60 years. And what happens to me in the meantime, to Emma? That's the risk. Sarah didn't flinch from the question. The Brennans will come after you with everything they have. Legal challenges, financial pressure, character assassination. They've been doing this for generations. They know how to destroy people. Marcus thought about Emma, about the lunch money she didn't have, about the future she deserved. Then he thought about Walter. 60 years of hiding. 60 years of waiting. 60 years of believing that someone would eventually come along who was strong enough to fight back. What do you need from me? Sarah smiled. It was the first genuine smile Marcus had seen in Steelton since Jessica died. Everything. Every document Walter saved. Every photograph. Every piece of evidence. She pulled out a notepad. And we're going to need allies. People who remember what this town used to be. People who still believe it could be something again. Marcus nodded slowly. I know a few. Good, because we're about to start a war. The first attack came 3 days later. Marcus was in his garage changing the oil on Mrs. Patterson's Honda and trying to figure out how he was going to pay for the parts he'd ordered on credit when Howard Brennan's Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Not at the curb, into the parking lot, blocking the entrance. Brennan stepped out, followed by a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. They walked toward Marcus with the coordinated purpose of predators approaching prey. Mr. Cole? Brennan's smile didn't reach his eyes. We need to have a conversation about your uncle's property. Marcus kept working on the Honda. We don't have anything to discuss. I think we do. Brennan gestured to the man beside him. This is Thomas Whitfield. He represents my family's legal interests. Whitfield opened his briefcase and produced a stack of documents. Mr. Cole, we've discovered some irregularities in your uncle's property records. Tax assessments that were improperly filed, zoning violations that were never addressed. Environmental concerns that may require extensive investigation. What kind of environmental concerns? Possible contamination from historical automotive operations, hazardous materials storage, underground tank leakage. Whitfield's voice was smooth, practiced. The County Environmental Agency will be launching a formal investigation next week. I'm afraid the property will need to be quarantined until the assessment is complete. Marcus finally looked up from the engine. That's convenient timing. Brennan's smile widened. These things have a way of coming to light when properties change hands. New owners, new scrutiny, I'm sure you understand. What do you want? I want to help you, Mr. Cole. I'm prepared to offer $3 million for the Route 19 property, well above market value, especially considering the potential environmental liabilities. The garage would need to be demolished, of course. Structural concerns, but you'd walk away with enough money to start fresh somewhere that actually has a future. Marcus wiped his hands on a shop rag. And the cars. Something flickered behind Brennan's eyes. Surprise quickly masked. What cars? The ones in the underground vault. The ones worth $175 million. The silence stretched between them like a blade. I don't know what you're talking about, Brennan said finally. My offer is for the land and the building. Whatever personal property Walter left behind is your concern. Marcus stepped closer to Brennan, close enough to smell his expensive cologne, close enough to see the vein pulsing in his temple. I know what your father did to my uncle. I know about the bribes, the smear campaign, Elizabeth Harmon. I know about the arson that was never investigated. Marcus watched Brennan's face carefully. You've been waiting 60 years for this property. Your father died waiting, and now you think you're going to bully me into handing it over. You're making serious accusations. I have documentation. Brennan's mask slipped, just for a moment, but Marcus saw the rage underneath, the entitled fury of a man who'd never been told no. You're out of your depth, Mr. Cole. You're a crippled mechanic with a failing business and a daughter who can't afford school lunches. I own this town. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. I own the suppliers who extend your credit. I own the county officials who will be investigating your property. Brennan leaned in. I can make your life very difficult. Probably. Then why are you still standing here? Marcus smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Because I spent 12 years learning how to deal with people who tried to kill me. You're not those people. You're a small-town bully with daddy issues and a grudge against a dead man. Marcus's voice dropped. I've faced worse in my morning, PT. Brennan stepped back. Whitfield put a hand on his arm, a warning. The offer stands, Brennan said tightly. $3 million. You have until Friday to accept. He turned toward his car, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Cole, I'd be careful about making accusations you can't prove. Slander laws in Pennsylvania are quite strict. The Mercedes backed out of the parking lot and disappeared down Main Street. Marcus watched it go, then pulled out his phone and called Sarah Chen. They're moving faster than we expected. What happened? Environmental investigation? Tax irregularities? Legal threats? Marcus walked back into his garage. They're trying to bury me before I can fight back. We need to accelerate the timeline. Agreed. Can you meet me at Walter's garage tonight? Bring everything you have. I'll be there at 7. Marcus hung up and stared at the Honda he'd been working on. A $100 oil change that wouldn't pay his electric bill. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma's school. Mr. Cole, please contact the principal's office regarding an incident with Emma during lunch period. Marcus grabbed his keys and ran. Emma was sitting in the principal's office, her face streaked with tears, her lunchbox clutched in her lap. A bruise was forming on her left cheek. Marcus dropped to his knees in front of her. What happened? Who hurt you? Tyler Brennan. Emma's voice was small, broken. He said I was a charity case. He said my daddy was a cripple who couldn't afford to feed me. He pushed me down and took my lunch. Tyler Brennan, Howard Brennan's grandson. Emma nodded. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The kind of cold he'd felt in Afghanistan when his unit walked into an ambush. The kind of cold that came before violence. Mr. Cole? Principal Henderson entered the office, his expression carefully neutral. Thank you for coming so quickly. What are you going to do about this? We're investigating the incident. Both children have been separated for the remainder of the day. Both children, my daughter, was assaulted. There are conflicting accounts of what occurred. Marcus stood up slowly. There's a bruise on her face. Tyler claims Emma fell during a game. He pushed her. That's one interpretation. Marcus stepped closer to Henderson. That's the truth. Henderson shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Cole, I understand you're upset, but the Brennan family has been a significant contributor to this school district for many years. I need to handle this situation with appropriate sensitivity. Appropriate sensitivity? Marcus's voice was flat, dangerous. I'm sure we can reach a resolution that satisfies everyone. Let me tell you what's going to satisfy me. Marcus picked up Emma and held her close. I'm taking my daughter home. Tomorrow you're going to call me and tell me that Tyler Brennan has been suspended for assault. And if I find out that this incident has been swept under the rug to protect the Brennan family's reputation, I'm going to contact every news outlet in Pennsylvania and tell them exactly what kind of school district you're running here. Henderson's face went pale. Mr. Cole, I don't think threats are appropriate. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Marcus headed for the door, Emma still in his arms. You have until tomorrow morning. He carried his daughter to the truck, buckled her into the passenger seat, and drove home in silence. Emma stared out the window, tears still sliding down her cheeks. Daddy. Yeah, baby girl. Why do they hate us? Marcus didn't have an answer. He'd been asking himself the same question since he came home from the war. I don't know him, but I'm going to fix it. How? I don't know that either, but I'll figure it out. He reached over and took her hand. That's what I do remember, I fix things. Emma squeezed his fingers. Mom said you were the bravest person she ever met. Your mom gave me too much credit. No, she didn't. Emma wiped her eyes with her free hand. She said you survived things that would have broken other people. She said you never gave up. Marcus thought about Walter. 60 years of patience. 60 years of planning. 60 years of waiting for someone who wouldn't give up. Tell you what, Em, how about we go see Uncle Walter's garage? I want to show you something. The secret thing, the thing in the letter. Yeah, the secret thing. Emma's tears stopped. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. Is it treasure? Marcus smiled. Something like that. The drive to Route 19 took 15 minutes. Marcus parked outside Walter's garage and led Emma through the front entrance past the pristine workbenches and organized tools to the hidden door in the back wall. This is like a movie, Emma whispered, like there's a secret passage. There is. Marcus opened the door and guided Emma down the stone steps, counting them aloud with her. 22 steps into darkness. At the bottom he found the light switch, and watched his daughter's face as the underground vault revealed itself. Daddy? Emma's voice was barely audible. Daddy, what is this? This is what Uncle Walter left us. Emma walked forward slowly, her small hand trailing along the covered shapes. She stopped at the nearest vehicle and looked up at Marcus. Can I? He nodded. She lifted the cover and revealed the Ferrari 250 GTO. Rosso Corsa red. Perfect curves. 60 years of automotive history waiting in silence. It's beautiful. Emma touched the fender with reverent fingers. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. There are 37 of them. Emma spun around, her mouth open. 37. Worth $175 million. Daddy, that's... She struggled with the number. That's more than everything in the whole world. It's a lot. Marcus knelt beside her. But Uncle Walter didn't just leave us cars, Em. He left us a responsibility. He wanted these cars to help people, to teach people, to give veterans and workers something to believe in. Like the soldiers you fought with. Like them. Like the people in this town who lost their jobs when the mill closed. Marcus took Emma's hands. But there are bad people who want to take it away from us. The same bad people who hurt Uncle Walter 60 years ago. The same people whose grandson pushed you today. Emma's jaw tightened. The same stubborn expression Marcus saw in the mirror every morning. Then we don't let them. It won't be easy. You always say the hard things are worth fighting for. I do say that, don't I? So we fight. Emma squeezed his hands. We fight like warriors, like you taught me. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Something that had been frozen since Jessica died. Since he came home broken from the war. Since the world told him he was worthless and he'd started to believe it. His daughter, 9 years old, braver than half the operators he'd served with. Okay, he said. We fight. Emma threw her arms around him. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. No. They stayed in the vault for another hour, Emma exploring the cars while Marcus told her stories about each one. The Ferrari that had won Le Mans. The Bugatti that had belonged to a French aristocrat. The Shelby that had set speed records on the Bonneville salt flats. By the time they left, the sun was setting and Emma was asleep in his arms. Marcus carried her to the truck, buckled her in, and drove home through the gathering darkness. Tomorrow he would start preparing for war. But tonight he had something more important. He had hope. Sarah Chen arrived at Walter's garage at 7 o'clock sharp, carrying 2 boxes of documents and a determined expression. I've been digging through county records all day, she said, spreading files across Walter's desk. The Brennans have been careful, but they've made mistakes. There are paper trails, witnesses who might still be alive. Evidence that's been sitting in archives for decades, waiting for someone to connect the dots. Marcus studied the documents. Tax filings, corporate registrations, meeting minutes, a web of connections that revealed the true scope of the Brennan family's influence. This goes deeper than I thought. It goes all the way down. Sarah pointed to an organizational chart she'd assembled. Howard Brennan Sr. founded Brennan Development in 1955. His brother-in-law became county prosecutor in 1962. His college roommate ran the town's largest bank. His wife's cousin edited the local newspaper. They built a machine. They built an empire. Every major decision in Steelton for the past 60 years has benefited the Brennan family in some way. Zoning changes that increased their property values. Tax abatements for their developments. Contracts awarded to companies they controlled. Marcus thought about his struggling garage, his maxed-out credit card, the suppliers who'd cut off his credit without explanation. They've been squeezing me since I got here. Probably. The Brennans don't like competition, and they really don't like outsiders. Sarah pulled out another folder. But here's the thing. Walter documented everything, every bribe, every backroom deal, every crime the Brennans committed. Why didn't he go public? Because going public would have meant revealing the cars, and revealing the cars would have made them vulnerable. Sarah met his eyes. Walter was protecting his legacy. He knew that as long as the collection remained hidden, the Brennans couldn't touch it. but he also knew that someone would eventually need to fight back. So he waited. For 60 years, for someone strong enough to finish what he started. Marcus looked around the vault. 37 vehicles worth a fortune. A dead man's legacy. A town's only hope. What do we need to do, Heck? First, we need to secure the collection legally. The community trust Walter established protects the cars, but only if we can prove we're meeting the educational requirements. Sarah produced another document. Walter planned to enter the Mercedes Gullwing in the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. Best of Show comes with a $500,000 prize and international media coverage. Pebble Beach. Marcus had heard of it, the most prestigious classic car competition in the world. Registration closes in 5 months. If we can restore the Mercedes to show condition and win, we'll have the resources and the profile to launch the Heritage Center. The Brennans won't be able to touch us. 5 months to restore a car that hasn't been driven in decades. Walter kept it in perfect preservation condition. It's not a restoration, it's a preparation. Sarah smiled. And I know some people who might be able to help. Marcus thought about the task ahead. The enemies arrayed against them. The impossible odds. Then he thought about Emma, about Walter, about everyone who'd ever been crushed by powerful people who believed they could take whatever they wanted. Tell me about these people. Sarah pulled out a photograph from her folder and slid it across Walter's desk. 3 men standing in front of the steel mill, arms around each other, smiling like they owned the world. James Rodriguez, they call him Jimmy. He was an army mechanic before an IED in Iraq took his right arm. 53 years old, divorced, living on disability in a trailer outside town. Sarah tapped the first face. His prosthetic is basic government issue, but his left hand remembers everything his right hand ever knew. Marcus studied the photograph. Where do I find him? Murphy's Bar, every night from 6 to midnight, drinking himself to death because nobody will give a one-armed mechanic a chance. Who else? Sarah pointed to the second man. Robert Patterson, everyone calls him Chief. He served with Walter in World War II. Same tank battalion, different company, 92 years old now. He's the last surviving member of their unit. He knew Walter. He kept Walter's secrets for 50 years. He's been waiting for this moment longer than either of us have been alive. Marcus looked at the third face. Young. Haunted. Eyes that had seen too much. Derek Washington, 26. Marine Corps, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Sarah's voice softened. He's been home 3 years and hasn't held a job for more than 2 months. The PTSD is bad, the drinking is worse, but I've seen him work on engines at the community center. The kid has talent he doesn't even know about. 3 broken veterans. 3 men who need something to believe in. Sarah met his eyes. Just like you did when you came home. Marcus thought about his own return from the war. The emptiness, the purposelessness. The feeling that everything he'd learned to do had no value in a world that didn't need warriors anymore. When can I meet them? Tonight, if you're ready. Marcus stood up and looked around the vault one more time. 37 vehicles, $175 million, a dead man's dream. Let's go. Murphy's Bar smelled like spilled beer and broken dreams. Marcus pushed through the door at 8:47 p.m. and scanned the room until he found Jimmy Rodriguez hunched over the far end of the bar, his prosthetic arm resting on the counter like an accusation against the world. Marcus took the stool beside him. You're the SEAL. Jimmy didn't look up from his drink. The one who inherited Crazy Walter's garage. Word travels fast. Small town, nothing else to talk about. Jimmy finally turned his head. His eyes were bloodshot but sharp, measuring. What do you want? I need a mechanic. Jimmy laughed. It was a bitter sound. In case you haven't noticed, I'm down an arm. I noticed. I'm down a leg. Marcus tapped his thigh. Shrapnel from an IED in Kandahar. Walks fine most days. Falls apart when the weather changes. So we're both broken. Congratulations. What's your point? My point is that I've got 37 classic cars worth more money than this entire town has seen in 50 years. I need someone who can help me restore a 1955 Mercedes to show condition in 5 months, and everyone I've talked to says you're the best mechanic Steelton ever produced. Jimmy's hand tightened on his glass. I was the best, before this happened. He lifted his prosthetic. Now I'm just another cripple collecting disability checks. That's what they want you to think. Who's they? The same people who shut down the mill. The same people who've been bleeding this town dry for 60 years. The same people who pushed my 9-year-old daughter down at school yesterday because her daddy couldn't afford lunch money. Marcus leaned closer. I'm going to war with the Brennan family, and I need soldiers who know what it means to fight when everyone says you've already lost. Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his drink. The Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. You know it. I know every car Walter ever collected. He used to let me look at them when I was a kid, before he closed everything down and disappeared. Jimmy's voice changed. Something like wonder crept into the bitterness. That car is a masterpiece. Fuel injection system that was 20 years ahead of its time. Gullwing doors that nobody's replicated since. Can you restore it? With one arm. With whatever you've got. Jimmy stared at Marcus for a long time. Then he pushed his drink away. When do we start? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I'll be there. Marcus stood up and dropped a 20 on the bar. First round's on me. Last round, too. No more drinking until we're done. Jimmy picked up the 20 and looked at it like it was written in a foreign language. You're serious about this? I'm serious about everything. It's a character flaw. For the first time, Jimmy Rodriguez smiled. Chief Patterson lived in a small house at the end of Maple Street, the same house he'd bought in 1952 when he came home from Korea and married his high school sweetheart. His wife had died 15 years ago. His children had moved away decades before that. Now he sat alone in his living room surrounded by photographs of people who were gone, waiting for his own turn to join them. Marcus knocked on the door at 9:23 p.m. Come in, it's open. He found the old man in a recliner, a blanket across his legs, a cup of tea cooling on the table beside him. Chief Patterson was 92 years old, his face a map of wrinkles and wisdom, his eyes still bright despite the years. You're Walter's boy. I'm Marcus Cole. Walter was my great-uncle. I know who you are. I've been watching you since you came to town. Chief gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Marcus sat. Walter told me you'd come eventually, not you specifically, but someone like you, someone who wouldn't sell, someone who'd fight. Chief's voice was thin but steady. He waited 60 years for this moment. I promised him I'd help when it finally arrived. Sarah Chen says you knew Walter in the war. We served together in Patton's Third Army, tank mechanics. We kept those Shermans running through France and Germany when the whole damn Wehrmacht was trying to blow them apart. Chief's eyes grew distant. Walter saved my life twice. Once at the Battle of the Bulge when he pulled me out of a burning tank. Once again in 1968 when he stopped me from killing Howard Brennan Sr. Marcus leaned forward. What happened in 1968? Walter came home with his dream. The Heritage Center. Training for veterans. A place where men like us could learn to build instead of destroy. Chief's hands tightened on the blanket. Brennan killed it. Bribed the council. Spread lies about Walter being crazy. And when that wasn't enough, he sent men to burn the garage. The arson. 3 cars destroyed. A 1937 Cord, a 1948 Tucker, a 1953 Cunningham. Chief's voice cracked. Walter loved those cars like children. When he saw them burning, something broke inside him. He never recovered. But he didn't give up? No, he built the vault, hid the rest of the collection, spent the next 50 years planning for the day when someone would finish what he started. Chief looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much death and not enough justice. Are you that someone? I'm going to try. Trying isn't enough. The Brennans don't fight fair. They never have. They'll come at you from every direction. Legal attacks, financial pressure, character assassination. Chief paused. They'll go after your daughter. They already did. Then you know what you're dealing with. Marcus nodded slowly. I need your help, Chief. I need everything you know about Walter. Everything you remember about the cars. Everything you can tell me about how to beat the Brennans. Chief Patterson smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd been waiting half a century for this conversation. I thought you'd never ask. The next morning at 5:47 a.m., Marcus pulled into Walter's garage to find Jimmy Rodriguez already there, a toolbox in his left hand, his prosthetic arm gleaming in the early light. You're early. Couldn't sleep. Jimmy set down his toolbox and walked toward the hidden door. Show me the Mercedes. They descended into the vault together. Jimmy moved through the rows of covered cars with the reverence of a pilgrim approaching a holy site. When they reached the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing, he pulled back the cover and stood motionless for a full minute. My God, his voice was barely a whisper. She's perfect. Walter kept her in preservation condition. Sarah says it's not a restoration, it's a preparation. Sarah's right. Jimmy circled the car slowly, his practiced eye cataloging every detail. Original paint, original interior, matching numbers engine. He knelt beside the front wheel and examined the brake system. Walter must have done a full service within the last 5 years. Everything's immaculate. Can we get her ready for Pebble Beach? In 5 months, Jimmy stood up and faced Marcus. It'll take a full mechanical overhaul, engine rebuild, transmission service, brake system refresh, suspension tuning. He paused. And that's just to make her run right. For a concourse, we'll need paint correction, interior detailing, chrome polishing, documentation verification. Is it possible? Jimmy was quiet for a moment. Then something changed in his expression. The defeated man from the bar was gone. In his place stood a master craftsman who'd just been given the project of a lifetime. It's going to take everything I've got. That's all I'm asking. And I'll need help. One arm isn't enough for some of this work. I've got someone in mind. Derek Washington showed up at Walter's garage 3 days later, summoned by a phone call from Sarah Chen that had caught him in the middle of a drinking binge at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. He was 26 years old, thin and hollow-eyed, with the 1,000-yard stare that Marcus recognized from his own mirrors for in the months after he came home. He stood in the doorway of the garage, his hands shaking slightly, looking like he might bolt at any moment. Ms. Chen said you needed help. I do. Come inside. Marcus led him through the garage, past the workbenches and tool chests to the hidden door. Derek's eyes widened when he saw the vault entrance. What is this place? This is what we're fighting for. They descended together. When Derek saw the cars, he stopped breathing. Holy... He couldn't finish the sentence. 37 vehicles, $175 million, and a chance to build something that matters. Derek walked through the rows in silence, his shaking hands stuffed in his pockets, his haunted eyes reflecting the gleaming paint and polished chrome. When he reached the Mercedes, he stopped. I worked on a gullwing once in Kabul. Some contractor had one shipped over as a status symbol. Engine blew, and he couldn't find anyone to fix it. Derek's voice was distant, lost in memory. I spent 3 weeks rebuilding that engine from nothing. Best work I ever did. Jimmy Rodriguez says he needs someone to assist with the mechanical overhaul, says the work requires 2 hands and he's only got 1. Derek finally looked at Marcus. I'm a mess. I can't hold a job. I can't sleep. I drink too much and I see things that aren't there. So did I, for 2 years after I came home. What changed? Marcus thought about Emma, about Jessica, about the desperate need to be something more than a broken soldier. I found something worth fighting for. Derek looked back at the Mercedes. Something shifted in his expression. Not hope exactly, but maybe the possibility of hope. When do we start? Right now. By the end of the first week, the garage had transformed into a working restoration shop. Jimmy Rodriguez ran the operation with military precision, assigning tasks and tracking progress on a whiteboard he'd mounted on the wall. His one arm moved with fluid efficiency, compensating for its absent partner through sheer force of will and decades of muscle memory. Derek Washington proved to be a natural. His hands stopped shaking when he worked as if the focus required to rebuild an engine silenced the chaos in his mind. He learned quickly, absorbed everything Jimmy taught him, and threw himself into the project with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Chief Patterson couldn't do physical work anymore, but his knowledge was invaluable. He remembered details about the Mercedes that weren't in any manual techniques Walter had used 40 years ago. Specifications that had been passed down through generations of craftsmen. And then there was Anna Kowalski. She appeared on the 8th day carrying a leather sample that made Jimmy's jaw drop. Ms. Chen sent me. She said you needed interior work. Anna was 42 years old, a single mother of 2 working 3 part-time jobs to survive. Her grandmother had worked at the original Mercedes factory in Stuttgart before immigrating to America, and she'd passed down hand-stitching techniques that were nearly extinct. Where did you learn to do this? Jimmy examined the sample with wonder. My grandmother. She made seats for the original 300 SL production run in 1954. She taught me everything before she died. Marcus looked at the sample. The stitching was flawless, identical to the original specifications. You're hired. I can't accept payment. I just want to be part of something that matters. The team was complete, but on the morning of day 12, the first real attack came. Marcus arrived at the garage at 6:15 a.m. to find a notice stapled to the front door. County Environmental Protection Agency. Emergency contamination assessment. Property quarantine effective immediately. His phone rang before he could finish reading. "Mr. Cole?" Thomas Whitfield's voice was smooth as oil. "I assume you've received the notice." "What is this standard procedure when potential environmental hazards are identified? The county has concerns about historical automotive operations on the property, underground storage tanks, hazardous material disposal. These things need to be investigated. There are no underground storage tanks. That's what the investigation will determine. In the meantime, all work on the property must cease. No personnel, no equipment, no activity of any kind." "For how long?" "These assessments can take 6 to 12 months, sometimes longer if additional concerns are identified." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "This is Brennan." "I don't know what you mean." "You know exactly what I mean. He's using the county to shut me down because he can't do it legally." "I'd be careful about making accusations, Mr. Cole. They can have consequences." Whitfield paused. "Of course, all of this could be avoided if you'd simply accept Mr. Brennan's offer. $3 million. A chance to start fresh, no environmental investigations, no complications." "The answer is still no." "Then I'm afraid the quarantine stands. Have a good day, Mr. Cole." The line went dead. Marcus stood in the parking lot staring at the notice, feeling the walls closing in. 12 days of progress. A team finally assembled. A dream starting to take shape. And now the Brennans had found a way to stop everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Jimmy. "What's happening? I'm at the gate and there's a padlock on it." Marcus started typing a response when another car pulled into the lot. A white sedan with county plates. A man in a rumpled suit stepped out carrying a clipboard. "Mr. Cole, I'm Frank Morrison, County Environmental Inspector. I just got off the phone with Whitfield." "Yes, well?" Morrison looked uncomfortable. "I'm required to inform you that any violation of the quarantine order will result in criminal charges. Trespassing, interference with a government investigation, potentially environmental crimes if we determine that work continued after the stop order. There's nothing wrong with this property." "That's what we're here to determine." Morrison handed him a card. "You have the right to appeal, but the quarantine remains in effect until the appeal is heard. Could be 3 months, could be 6. 3 months, half their timeline gone before they even started. Marcus looked at the garage, at the hidden vault beneath it, at everything Walter had spent 60 years protecting. "I want to see the complaint." "I'm sorry. The original complaint that triggered this investigation, I have a right to see it." Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "I don't have that documentation with me." "Then get it, because if this is a fraudulent complaint, filed for the purpose of harassment, I'll be contacting every news outlet in the state." "Mr. Cole, I'm just doing my job." "So am I." Marcus watched the inspector drive away, then pulled out his phone and called Sarah Chen. "They've quarantined the property." "Environmental investigation?" "Brennan's using the county to shut us down. They're claiming potential contamination. The whole thing is manufactured, but they've got the legal authority to enforce it." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "How long?" 3 to 6 months minimum. Appeal process could take another 3. That kills Pebble Beach." "I know." "What are you going to do?" Marcus looked at the padlocked gate, at the notice stapled to the door, at everything the Brennans were trying to take from him. "I'm going to find another way." "There isn't another way, without access to the garage." Walter spent 60 years planning for every contingency. There has to be something in his files, a backup plan, an alternative location. Marcus started walking toward his truck. "I need to get into that building. The quarantine is based on a fraudulent complaint. I'm going to prove it." "How?" "By finding out who filed it." The county records office closed at 4:30 p.m. Marcus arrived at 4:17. The clerk behind the counter was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who clearly wanted to go home. She looked at Marcus with the weary patience of someone who'd spent decades dealing with people who didn't understand bureaucracy. "Can I help you?" "I need to see the original complaint that triggered an environmental investigation on property located at 4127 Route 19. Environmental complaints are confidential. Not when they're used as the basis for a quarantine order. I have a right to see the documentation that's being used to shut down my property." The clerk sighed. "Do you have identification?" Marcus showed her his driver's license. She typed something into her computer, frowned, typed something else, and frowned again. "That's strange." "What?" "The complaint is sealed." "Sealed environmental complaints can be sealed." "Not usually, but this one has a judicial order attached, filed this morning." She looked up at Marcus. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure you couldn't see this document. Marcus felt his hands tightening into fists. Who filed the sealing order? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Can't. The order itself is sealed. The clerk's expression shifted. Something like sympathy flickered in her eyes. Mr. Cole, I've worked in this office for 23 years. I've never seen a complaint sealed like this. Whoever you're dealing with has serious connections. The Brennan family. The clerk's face went carefully blank. I can't comment on that. You don't have to. Marcus left the records office and sat in his truck for a long time, thinking. The Brennans had planned this. They'd known he would come looking for the complaint. They'd sealed it before he could see it. Every move he made, they were 3 steps ahead. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at St. Michael's Church. 7 p.m. Come alone. I have information about Walter Cole. Marcus stared at the message. A trap or an ally, he drove to St. Michael's and arrived at 6:52 p.m. The church was empty except for an old woman sitting in the front pew, her head bowed in prayer. Marcus slid into the pew behind her and waited. You look like him. The woman's voice was thin but clear, like Walter when he was young. Who are you? My name is Margaret Brennan. She turned to face him. I was Howard Sr.'s wife for 43 years. I watched him destroy your uncle, and I've spent the last 30 years trying to find a way to make it right. Marcus felt the world shift beneath him. You're Howard Jr.'s mother. Yes, and I'm ashamed of what my family has become. Margaret's eyes were wet with tears she'd been holding for decades. Walter Cole was the best man I ever knew. He loved Elizabeth Harmon with everything he had, and my husband destroyed them both because he wanted land. Why are you telling me this? Because my son is worse than his father ever was. Howard Jr. has no conscience, no limits. He'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I've kept this hidden for 30 years. Records, documents, evidence of everything my husband did to Walter in this town. Marcus took the envelope with hands that weren't quite steady. Why now? Because I'm dying. Cancer. 3 months, maybe 4. Margaret smiled sadly. I spent my whole life being a coward, staying silent while my husband and son hurt people. I don't want to die a coward too. This could destroy your family. My family destroyed itself long ago. I'm just making sure the world finally knows the truth. Margaret stood up slowly, using the pew for support. There's something else. Something I never told anyone. What? The night of the fire. The night they burned Walter's garage. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. My husband didn't just send men to destroy the cars, he sent them to kill Walter. Marcus felt ice forming in his chest. Walter was supposed to be in the garage that night. He always worked late, but that night for some reason he'd gone home early. Margaret's tears finally spilled over. My husband murdered 3 cars and tried to murder a man, all for a piece of land. Why didn't you go to the police? Because my husband owned the police, owned the prosecutor, owned everyone. Margaret touched Marcus's hand. But he didn't own Walter, and he doesn't own you. That's why he's afraid. For the first time in 60 years, someone is fighting back. She walked away without looking back, her footsteps echoing in the empty church. Marcus sat alone in the pew holding an envelope that could change everything, thinking about a fire that was meant to be a murder. The Brennans hadn't just destroyed Walter's dream. They'd tried to kill him, and now Marcus had the proof. He opened the envelope and began to read. The documents inside were explosive. Bank records showing payments from Brennan Development to county officials. Meeting minutes from closed-door sessions where deals were made and lives were traded. Affidavits from witnesses who'd been too afraid to speak publicly. Photographs of Howard Sr. with men who'd later been identified as professional arsonists, and at the bottom of the stack, a letter, written in Walter's handwriting, dated the day after the fire. To whoever finds this, they tried to kill me tonight. Howard Brennan sent men to burn my garage while I was inside. They didn't know I'd left early. Elizabeth's engagement ring was ready, and I'd gone to pick it up from the jeweler. I was going to propose tomorrow. Now I don't know if tomorrow will ever come. The fire destroyed 3 of my cars, but it destroyed something more important. It destroyed my faith in this town, in justice, in the possibility of building something beautiful in a world full of ugliness. I'm going underground, hiding the rest of my collection where no one can find it, waiting for the day when someone strong enough comes along to finish what I started. If you're reading this, then that someone is you. Don't let them win. Don't let them take what I've spent my life protecting. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone named Brennan. They are monsters wearing human faces. Walter Cole. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he pulled out his phone and called Sarah Chen. I have everything we need to destroy the Brennans. What did you find? Proof that Howard Sr. tried to murder Walter. Proof that the family has been bribing officials for 60 years. Enough evidence to put Howard Jr. in prison for the rest of his life. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Where did you get this while... Margaret Brennan. Howard's mother. She's dying. Cancer. She wants to make things right before she goes. Marcus, this changes everything. If we can get this to the right people, it changes nothing. Marcus cut her off. Not yet. The Brennans still own the county. They can bury any investigation, silence any witness, make any evidence disappear. Then what do? We use it as leverage. We get them to drop the environmental investigation. We get access to the garage. We finish what we started. And if they don't cooperate, then we go public. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every journalist who's ever wanted to expose small-town corruption. Marcus felt something cold and hard settling in his chest. The same feeling he'd had in Afghanistan when his unit was surrounded and the only way out was through. I'm done playing defense. It's time to attack. The meeting happened at Brennan Development's corporate office at 9 a.m. the next morning. Marcus walked into the conference room to find Howard Brennan waiting with Thomas Whitfield and 2 additional lawyers. 4 against 1. The way bullies always preferred their odds. Mr. Cole? Brennan's smile was confident. Smug. I assume you're here to discuss our offer? I'm here to make you a counteroffer. Marcus set the manila envelope on the conference table. What's this, the end of your family's 60-year reign of terror? Marcus slid the envelope across the table. Bank records, meeting minutes, witness statements, and a letter from your father's own wife detailing how he tried to murder my uncle in 1968. Brennan's face went pale. Whitfield grabbed the envelope and began flipping through the documents, his expression growing more alarmed with each page. These are forgeries. They're originals, certified and notarized. Your mother kept meticulous records. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop the environmental investigation. You're going to return full access to my property, and you're going to leave me and my daughter alone for the rest of your life. And if I don't, then tomorrow morning, these documents go to every major news outlet in Pennsylvania, the FBI, the state attorney general, anyone and everyone who might be interested in 60 years of corruption, bribery, and attempted murder. Brennan's hands were shaking. You're bluffing. Try me. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Whitfield leaned over and whispered something in Brennan's ear. Whatever he said made Brennan's face twist with rage. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Marcus stood up. You have until noon today to drop the investigation. After that, I go public. He walked out without looking back. At 11:47 a.m., Marcus received a call from Frank Morrison at the county environmental office. Mr. Cole, I wanted to let you know that the contamination complaint has been withdrawn. The quarantine order has been lifted. You're free to resume normal operations on your property. Marcus hung up and looked at Jimmy Rodriguez, who was waiting in the truck beside him. We're back in business. Jimmy grinned. Then let's get to work. They drove to Walter's garage and found the padlock removed, the notice gone, the gate standing open. Inside, the team was already assembling. Derek Washington, Anna Kowalski, Chief Patterson in his wheelchair, pushed by Sarah Chen, Miguel Santos, the former mill machinist who'd heard about the project and volunteered his services. 12 days lost, Jimmy said, surveying the vault. But we can make it up if we work double shifts. Whatever it takes, Marcus replied. We've got 5 months to prepare for Pebble Beach. Let's not waste another minute. The work began in earnest, and somewhere across town, Howard Brennan sat in his office staring at the documents his mother had given away, planning his revenge. The Mercedes engine roared to life at 7:23 a.m. on day 47. Jimmy Rodriguez stepped back from the hood, his face streaked with grease, his single arm trembling from exhaustion. The sound that filled the vault was pure mechanical poetry, a symphony of precision engineering that had been silent for decades. Listen to that. Jimmy's voice cracked with emotion. She's singing. Marcus stood beside him, watching the RPM needle climb smooth and steady. 47 days of work, 18-hour shifts, 3 complete engine rebuilds because Jimmy refused to accept anything less than perfection. How does she feel, like she's been waiting 60 years for someone to wake her up? Jimmy killed the engine and turned to face Marcus. The mechanical work is done. Engine, transmission, brakes, suspension. She runs better than she did when she left the factory. What's next? Paint correction, interior finishing, documentation assembly. Jimmy wiped his hands on a rag. Another 8 weeks if we push hard. We've got 12 weeks until Pebble Beach. Then we've got 4 weeks of buffer. Jimmy almost smiled. First time in this whole project, I'm not terrified. Shh. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Go home, get some sleep. You've earned it. What about you? I've got paperwork, insurance documents, provenance records. Marcus looked at the stack of files on Walter's desk. The car has to be perfect, but so does the story. Jimmy headed up the stairs and Marcus settled into Walter's chair. The vault was quiet now. The Mercedes cooling and clicking as her engine settled. 36 other vehicles waited in their covers, patient sentinels guarding a legacy that stretched back half a century. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Daddy, can I come to the garage after school? I want to help. Marcus typed back. Of course, baby girl. I'll pick you up at 3. He spent the next 4 hours organizing Walter's documentation. Every car in the collection had a complete history bills of sale restoration records, photographs from every stage of preservation. Walter had been meticulous, almost obsessive, about proving the authenticity of each vehicle. The Mercedes file was particularly thick. Original window sticker from 1955. Service records from the first owner, a German diplomat stationed in Washington. Correspondence with Mercedes-Benz confirming matching numbers. Insurance appraisals dating back to 1968. And at the bottom of the file, something Marcus hadn't noticed before. A photograph of Walter, standing beside the Mercedes, his arm around a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. On the back, written in faded ink, Walter and Elizabeth May, 1967, the day he proposed. Marcus stared at the photograph for a long time. Elizabeth Harmon. The woman Walter had loved. The woman who'd been forced to choose between him and her family. She'd died in 1989. Cancer. She'd written Walter a letter warning him about the Brennans, confessing that she'd never stopped loving him. And Walter had kept her photograph in the Mercedes file for 35 years. He was going to give her this car. Marcus spoke the words aloud, understanding flooding through him. The Mercedes was supposed to be a wedding gift. The car wasn't just valuable, it was sacred. And now Marcus understood why Walter had hidden it, protected. It waited 60 years for someone to bring it back into the light. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about love that had been stolen and a promise that could finally be kept. At 3:15 p.m., Marcus picked Emma up from school. She bounced into the truck with an energy that never failed to amaze him, chattering about her day, her friends, a science project about volcanoes. Mrs. Patterson said my volcano was the best in class. It actually erupted and everything. That's great, sweetheart. And Tyler Brennan tried to mess it up, but I saw him coming and I moved it away before he could touch it. Emma's voice hardened. He's still a jerk. Language. Sorry, he's still a bully. Marcus glanced at his daughter. The bruise on her cheek had faded weeks ago, but he could still see it in his mind. Still feel the rage that had surged through him when he'd seen what Tyler had done. Has he been bothering you? He tries, but I don't let him get to me anymore. Emma looked out the window. Derek taught me something. He said bullies only have power if you give it to them, so I don't give Tyler anything. Derek said that, yeah, he's really smart, Daddy, and he's getting better. Have you noticed? Marcus had noticed. Over the past 7 weeks, Derek Washington had transformed. The hollow-eyed veteran who'd shown up shaking and broken was gone. In his place was a focused, capable young man who arrived early and stayed late, who absorbed everything Jimmy taught him, who'd found something to believe in. I've noticed. He told me about Afghanistan, about the things he saw there. Shit. Emma's voice softened. He said working on the cars helps him forget. Like his hands are so busy, his brain doesn't have time to remember the bad stuff. Marcus felt his throat tighten. His daughter was 9 years old, and she understood trauma better than most adults. Derek's lucky to have you as a friend. We're lucky to have him. Emma turned to face her father. Daddy, what happens if we win at Pebble Beach? We use the prize money to start the Heritage Center, train veterans, create jobs, build something that helps people. And if we lose, Marcus was quiet for a moment. He'd been asking himself the same question for weeks. Then we find another way. We don't give up. That's what I thought you'd say. Emma grinned. Because that's what warriors do. They arrived at Walter's garage at 3:47 p.m. The parking lot was full vehicles belonging to the team members who'd become like family over the past 2 months. Emma jumped out of the truck and ran toward the building. Derek, Jimmy, I'm here. Marcus followed more slowly, savoring the sight of his daughter sprinting towards something she cared about, surrounded by people who cared about her. For the first time in years, he felt like he might actually have a future. The feeling lasted exactly 4 hours. At 8:12 p.m., Marcus was in Walter's office reviewing insurance documents when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Cole?" The voice was distorted electronic. "You should check on your garage." "Who is this?" "Someone who wants you to understand that winning one battle doesn't mean you've won the war." The line went dead. Marcus was on his feet before the phone hit the desk. "Everyone out. Now." Jimmy looked up from the Mercedes. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Get everyone out of the building." The team moved quickly, years of military training kicking in for the veterans' instinct taking over for the civilians. Within 90 seconds, everyone was in the parking lot. Marcus counted heads. Jimmy, Derek, Anna, Chief Patterson, Sarah Chen, Miguel Santos. "Where's Emma?" "She was in the office upstairs," Sarah said, looking at Walter's photographs. Marcus sprinted back toward the building. "Emma!" "Daddy, I'm here." Her voice came from the second floor. "I was just getting my backpack." She appeared in the doorway, a backpack over her shoulder, confusion on her face. "What's happening? Get to the truck, now!" He grabbed her hand and pulled her across the parking lot. The team was already piling into vehicles, pulling away from the building. Marcus shoved Emma into the truck and turned to look at the garage. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the windows exploded. Not fire. Something worse. The Mercedes. Someone had gotten inside. Someone had destroyed the car while they were standing in the parking lot, evacuated by a phone call designed to get them out of the building just long enough. Marcus ran back toward the garage, ignoring the shouts from his team, ignoring everything except the sight of the open door and the knowledge of what he would find inside. The vault was untouched. Whoever had done this hadn't found the hidden entrance. But the Mercedes was in the upper garage, where they'd been working, where it had been sitting unprotected while they celebrated their progress. He descended through the service bay and saw it. Every panel scratched, every window shattered, the leather interior slashed to ribbons, the engine compartment filled with sand. 8 weeks of work, destroyed in minutes. Jimmy appeared beside him. His face was pale. His single hand hung at his side, trembling. "No." The word came out as a whisper. "No, no, no." Derek was next, followed by Anna, followed by the others. They gathered around the ruined Mercedes like mourners at a funeral. "Who did this?" Anna's voice cracked. "Who would do this?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. "Brennan." The phone call. The distorted voice. "Winning one battle doesn't mean you've won the war." Howard Brennan had waited, had planned, had found the perfect moment to strike, and now everything they'd worked for lay in ruins. Chief Patterson approached slowly, his wheelchair pushed by Sarah. The old man looked at the destroyed Mercedes and began to cry. "Walter," his thin voice broke on the name. "I'm so sorry, Walter. I tried to protect her. I tried." Marcus knelt beside the wheelchair and took Chief's hand. "This isn't over. Look at her." Chief gestured at the ruined car. 8 weeks until Pebble Beach. There's no way to fix this in time. We'll find a way. How? The panels are destroyed. The interior is gone. The engine is contaminated. Chief's tears flowed freely now. Brennan won. He finally won. No. Emma's voice cut through the grief. She pushed past the adults and stood in front of the Mercedes, her small fists clenched at her sides. He didn't win? He's just a bully, and bullies only have power if you give it to them. Emma, sweetheart. No, Daddy, listen. She turned to face the team. Uncle Walter waited 60 years. 60 years. He didn't give up when they burned his garage. He didn't give up when they took Elizabeth away from him. He didn't give up when the whole town turned against him. Her voice rose. Are we going to give up because one car got hurt? The damage is extensive, Jimmy said gently. We're talking about a complete rebuild. Then we rebuild. Emma looked at each team member in turn. Derek, you rebuilt an engine in Kabul with nothing but spare parts and determination. Jimmy, you work miracles with one arm. Anna, your grandmother made seats for the original cars with nothing but needles and thread. She pointed at the Mercedes. This is just metal and leather and glass. We can fix metal. We can fix leather. We can fix glass. The team was silent. Then Derek Washington stepped forward. She's right? Derek. No, listen to me. His voice was stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. I came home from Afghanistan broken. I spent 3 years wanting to die. And then I found this place. Found these people. He looked at the Mercedes with eyes that held something new. Not defeat, determination. I'm not going to let some rich bully take that away from me. From us. Jimmy Rodriguez straightened up. The defeated slump in his shoulders began to change. The engine's salvageable, the chassis is intact, the frame is solid. He walked around the car, assessing the damage with professional eyes. We'd need new panels, new glass, new interior materials. Where do we get them? Marcus asked. I know a supplier in Detroit who might have original replacement parts, and there's a glass specialist in Chicago who does period-correct windshields. Jimmy's mind was already racing. It'll cost money we don't have. I can help with that. Chief Patterson wiped his eyes. Walter left me some things. Emergency funds. I was saving them for... Well, I suppose this qualifies as an emergency. How much was $50,000, cash, hidden in my basement since 1975? The team stared at him. Walter always planned for the worst. He knew the Brennans would try something eventually. Chief almost smiled. He just didn't know when. 50,000. Jimmy ran calculations in his head. It's enough. Barely, but it's enough. Then we're doing this, Anna asked. Marcus looked at his team. Broken people who'd found each other. Wounded warriors who'd learned to fight again. We're doing this, but we need to work faster than we've ever worked before. Double shifts, triple shifts, whatever it takes. 8 weeks. Jimmy took a deep breath. It's going to be hell. I've been to hell. Derek's voice was steady. I survived. I can do it again. One by one, the team members nodded. Anna, Miguel, Sarah, Chief, and Emma standing in front of them all, her small face set with the same stubborn determination that Marcus saw in the mirror every morning. Let's get to work, she said. The next 5 weeks blurred together in a haze of exhaustion, determination, and small miracles. Day 49. Jimmy's contact in Detroit located a complete set of original replacement panels in a collector's warehouse. The owner had been sitting on them for 20 years, waiting for the right buyer. He wants $40,000, Jimmy reported. Says he won't go lower. Tell him we'll take them. Chief Patterson handed over a stack of cash. Walter would want this. Day 53. Anna Kowalski finished the new interior in a marathon session that lasted 36 hours straight. Her fingers bled through the bandages by the end, but the stitching was flawless. It's better than before, she said, collapsing into a chair. I don't know how, but it's better. Day 58. The glass specialist in Chicago delivered the new windshield, personally driving 8 hours because he wanted to see the car it was going into. I've heard about this project, he said, examining the Mercedes with professional appreciation. What you're doing here, the veterans, the community. He refused payment. Consider it a donation. Some things matter more than money. Day 63. Derek Washington discovered a problem with the electrical system that nobody else had noticed. A short in the wiring harness that could have caused a fire during the competition. How did you find this? Jimmy asked, amazed. I don't know. I just felt it. Derek's hands were steady as he repaired the damage. Like the car was talking to me. Day 67. Marcus received a call from an unknown number at 2:34 a.m. Mr. Cole? Howard Brennan's voice. Unfiltered this time, no electronic distortion. I have to admit I'm impressed. I thought destroying the car would break you. You thought wrong. Apparently, but I want you to understand something. Brennan's voice dropped. This isn't over. You may have rebuilt the Mercedes. You may even make it to Pebble Beach. But I have resources you can't imagine. Connections you can't fight. Influence you can't overcome. Why are you calling me? To offer you one last chance. Sell me the collection. $500 million. More money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Brennan paused. Or keep fighting and watch me destroy everything you care about. $500 million. That's right. The collection is worth $175 million. I'm willing to pay a premium to end this. Consider it compensation for your trouble. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. What's funny? You are. You're offering me $500 million because you're scared. I'm not scared of anything. Yes, you are. You're scared that we're going to win. You're scared that your family's 60-year grip on this town is finally going to break. Marcus felt the cold clarity settling over him. You destroyed our car and we rebuilt it in 5 weeks. You threw everything you had at us and we're still standing. And now you're offering me money because you finally realized that you can't beat us any other way. You're making a mistake, Cole. No, you made the mistake 60 years ago when your father tried to kill my uncle. Marcus's voice hardened. I have all the documentation. Remember every bribe, every crime, every body buried in your family's closet. If I don't win at Pebble Beach, I'll release everything. And if anything happens to me, to my daughter, to anyone on my team, the documents go public automatically. Silence on the other end. You're bluffing. Try me. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness of Walter's office, his heart pounding, his hands steady for the first time in months. He'd just declared war on a man who'd been destroying people for generations, but he'd also done something else. He'd refused to be afraid. Day 71, the Mercedes was complete. Jimmy stepped back from the car and looked at it with tears in his eyes. Every panel gleamed. Every piece of chrome sparkled. Every component functioned exactly as it had 60 years ago. She's perfect, his voice cracked. She's absolutely perfect. The team gathered around the car exhausted and triumphant. 5 weeks of impossible work. 5 weeks of 18-hour days and 3-hour nights. 5 weeks of pushing their bodies and minds beyond every limit they thought they had. We did it, Derek's voice held wonder. We actually did it. Not yet. Marcus looked at his team. We've built the car, now we have to win with it. Registration closes in 3 days. Adi, Sarah said. I've already submitted the paperwork. We're confirmed for Class E4 European sports cars, 1954 and 1960. What's our competition? Fierce. A Porsche 550 Spider from Germany, a Ferrari 250 GT from Italy, a Jaguar E-Type from England. Sarah pulled out a folder. Professional restoration teams with unlimited budgets and decades of experience. And us. Jimmy looked around the vault. A one-armed mechanic, a traumatized Marine, a single mother, a 92-year-old veteran, and a 9-year-old girl. Don't forget the crippled Navy SEAL, Marcus added. The team laughed. It was the laughter of people who'd been through hell together and come out the other side. We might actually win, Anna said quietly. I didn't believe it until just now, but looking at this car, looking at what we've accomplished, we might actually win. We're going to win, Emma's voice was certain. Uncle Walter waited 60 years for this. He wouldn't have waited if he didn't know it would work out. Marcus pulled his daughter close. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. I don't remember teaching you anything. You taught me everything. Emma looked up at him with Jessica's eyes. You taught me that warriors don't give up, that family takes care of family, that some things are worth fighting for even when everyone says you can't win. Marcus felt his throat tighten. 4 years of grief. 4 years of struggling alone. 4 years of wondering if he was doing right by his daughter. And here she was, stronger than he'd ever imagined, braver than he'd ever hoped. I love you, baby girl. I love you too, Daddy. Chief Patterson cleared his throat. If you'll all excuse an old man's sentimentality, I'd like to say something. The team turned to face him. 50 years ago, I made a promise to Walter Cole. I promised him that I would help finish what he started no matter how long it took. Chief's voice trembled with emotion. I'm 92 years old. I've outlived my wife, my children, most of my friends. But I held on because I knew this day would come. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Walter wrote this letter in 1968. He gave it to me the night of the fire, the night he decided to go underground. He told me to give it to whoever finally brought his cars back into the light. Chief handed the paper to Marcus. Read it, aloud, so we can all hear. Marcus unfolded the letter with trembling hands. To whoever stands where I cannot stand, he began. If you're reading this, then my collection has finally found its purpose. 60 years ago, I dreamed of building something that would outlast me, a place where broken people could learn to build again, a sanctuary for veterans who came home from war with wounds that nobody could see. I failed to build it in my lifetime, but I planted seeds, I hid treasures. I waited for someone who would understand that the cars were never the point. The point was the people, the craftsmen, the warriors, the wounded souls who needed something to believe in. If you've made it this far, then you've already proven you're the one I was waiting for. Now go finish what I started. Win for me. Win for Elizabeth. Win for everyone who was ever told they weren't good enough, strong enough, connected enough to compete with the powerful. Prove them wrong. Walter Raymond Cole, October 15, 1968. The vault was silent. Then Chief Patterson began to applaud, slowly, deliberately. One by one, the others joined in. Jimmy Rodriguez, Derek Washington, Anna Kowalski, Miguel Santos, Sarah Chen, and Emma clapping harder than anyone, her face streaming with tears she didn't bother to wipe away. Marcus stood among them, holding a letter from a dead man who'd believed in him before they'd ever met, surrounded by people who'd become his family. 3 days until we ship the car to California, he said when the applause died down. I want everyone rested, everyone ready, because when we get to Pebble Beach, we're not just competing for ourselves. We're competing for Walter, Derek said. We're competing for Steelton, Anna added. We're competing for everyone who ever got knocked down and got back up, Jimmy finished. Marcus nodded. We're competing for everyone who ever got knocked down and got back up. He looked at the Mercedes one last time. Silver paint gleaming. Red leather glowing. 60 years of history waiting to be written. Now let's go win. The transport truck arrived at 6 a.m. on day 74. Marcus supervised the loading, personally watching as the Mercedes was secured in a custom trailer designed to protect the most valuable cargo on Earth. The team gathered in the parking lot, exhaustion and anticipation warring on their faces. California, here we come, Derek said. It's a long drive. Jimmy checked the trailer one more time. 3 days if we take it slow. We're not taking it slow. Down. Marcus climbed into the cab of the transport truck. We're getting there in 2. I don't want that car out of my sight for 1 second longer than necessary. The convoy formed up. Marcus in the transport truck, Sarah and Chief in her sedan, Jimmy and Derek in Jimmy's pickup, Anna and Miguel following in Anna's minivan. Emma rode with Marcus, her backpack full of books and her face pressed against the window. Daddy, are you scared? A little. Me too. She reached over and took his hand. But that's okay, right? Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. That's exactly right. Mom told me that. The night before you left for your last deployment. Emma's voice was soft. She said you were the bravest person she knew, but you were also scared every time you went away. She said that's what made you a hero, because you did the hard things even when you were afraid. Marcus felt tears threatening. He blinked them back. Your mom was pretty smart. She was the smartest. Emma squeezed his hand. She's watching us, you know, from wherever she is. She's watching, and she's proud. You think so? I know so. They drove in silence for a while, the Pennsylvania landscape giving way to Ohio, then Indiana, then the long flat stretch of Illinois. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. Mr. Cole. A voice he didn't recognize. Young, nervous. You don't know me, but I work for Howard Brennan, or I did until about an hour ago. Who is this? My name is Kevin Marsh. I was Mr. Brennan's personal assistant. The voice dropped. I just found out what he's planning, and I couldn't stay quiet. Marcus pulled the truck onto the shoulder and stopped. What's he planning? He's not going to let you compete. He's arranged for the car to be impounded when you arrive in California, some kind of customs violation, paperwork irregularities. Kevin's voice trembled. He paid off officials at the port of Los Angeles to flag your transport as suspicious cargo. Los Angeles. We're not going through L.A. He doesn't know that. He thinks you're shipping the car by freight from New York to Long Beach. A pause. I was supposed to track your route and confirm when you left, but I couldn't do it. What you're doing, what your team is doing, it matters, and I couldn't be part of destroying it. Marcus processed this information rapidly. Why are you telling me? Because my grandfather was a veteran, Vietnam. He came home broken, and nobody helped him. He died when I was 12. Kevin's voice cracked. I've been reading about your heritage center, what you want to build. My grandfather would have given anything for a place like that. Thank you, Kevin. This helps more than you know. Be careful, Mr. Cole. Brennan is desperate. When the impound doesn't work, he'll try something else. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness thinking. Brennan had assumed they'd ship the car by freight, a reasonable assumption. The standard practice for transporting valuable vehicles to competitions. But Marcus hadn't done the standard thing. He'd driven the car himself, kept it in his sight every mile of the journey, and now that paranoia had saved them. He pulled back onto the highway and kept driving. Day 76. 4:23 p.m. The convoy crossed into California. Marcus had pushed them hard. Minimal stops. Rotating drivers. 3 hours of sleep in truck stop parking lots. Now with the Pacific Ocean somewhere beyond the mountains ahead, he allowed himself to believe that they might actually make it. His phone rang. Marcus? Sarah's voice. Urgent. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? I just got a call from the Pebble Beach registration office. Our entry has been flagged for review, something about discrepancies in the provenance documentation. That's impossible. Walter's documentation is flawless. I know, but someone filed a complaint claiming the car's ownership is disputed. They're threatening to disqualify us before we even arrive. Marcus felt the familiar cold settling in his chest. Brennan? Again? Who filed the complaint? Anonymous, but the timing is too convenient to be coincidence. Can we appeal, Thumb? The review board meets tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We need to be there in person to present our case. Marcus checked his GPS. Monterey was still 6 hours away. If they pushed through the night, they'd arrive just in time. We're not stopping. Marcus, you've been driving for 36 hours. Then someone else can drive. He pulled the truck to the shoulder and jumped out. Jimmy, Derek, get up here. We're rotating drivers. Jimmy jogged over from his pickup. What's happening? Brennan filed a complaint with the registration office. They're trying to disqualify us. Jimmy's face hardened. That son of a language. Emma had woken up and was watching through the truck window. Sorry, Emma. That son of a gun. Better. Steve. Marcus handed Jimmy the keys. You drive. I need to prepare for the review board hearing. You got it, boss. The convoy moved out again. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, pulling up documents on his phone, preparing arguments, gathering evidence. Behind him, Emma had fallen back asleep, her head resting against her backpack, her face peaceful despite everything. 6 hours to Monterey. 8 hours to the hearing. And somewhere in California, Howard Brennan was making his final move. The convoy rolled into Monterey at 6:47 a.m., exactly 73 minutes before the review board hearing that would determine whether they could compete at all. Marcus hadn't slept. His eyes burned. His leg throbbed from sitting too long. But his mind was sharp, fueled by adrenaline and the absolute certainty that Howard Brennan would not win this final battle. Sarah, take Emma to the hotel. Get her some breakfast. Daddy, I want to come with you. Not this time, baby girl. Marcus knelt beside her. This is grown-up stuff. Legal stuff. I need you rested for when we actually compete. Promise you'll win. I promise I'll fight. Emma threw her arms around his neck. That's the same thing. The Pebble Beach Lodge conference room smelled like old money and expensive coffee. Marcus entered at 7:52 a.m. wearing the only suit he owned, a 10-year-old blazer he'd bought for Jessica's funeral and hadn't worn since. 3 people sat behind a long table. Patricia Wentworth, chief judge. Dr. Heinrich Mueller, authentication specialist. James Crawford, legal advisor to the concours. And sitting in a chair along the wall looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine advertisement was Howard Brennan. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. What is he doing here? Mr. Brennan filed the complaint, Crawford explained. He has a right to be present during the review. This should be interesting. Brennan's smile was predatory. I've been looking forward to meeting you in person, Mr. Cole. The feeling isn't mutual. Gentlemen, Patricia Wentworth's voice cut through the tension. We're here to review a complaint regarding entry number 247A 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, submitted by the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center. Mr. Brennan, you may present your concerns. Brennan stood and approached the table with the practiced ease of a man accustomed to having his way. Thank you, Judge Wentworth. My concerns are simple. The documentation supporting this vehicle's provenance is incomplete and potentially fraudulent. The car allegedly belonged to Walter Cole, but Mr. Cole died without a proper will, and the chain of custody from his estate to Mr. Marcus Cole here is legally questionable. That's a lie. Marcus kept his voice level. Walter Cole left a notarized will naming me as his sole beneficiary. The transfer of ownership was recorded with the Pennsylvania Department of Motor Vehicles and verified by the county assessor's office. Documents that could have been forged. Documents that my lawyers are currently challenging in Pennsylvania court. Brennan pulled a folder from his briefcase. I have here a preliminary injunction requesting that all assets of the Walter Cole estate be frozen pending a full investigation of the inheritance claims. Marcus felt ice forming in his chest. When was this filed? Yesterday afternoon, after business hours. Brennan's smile widened. The court won't rule until Monday, by which time this competition will be over. This is a transparent attempt to interfere with our entry. This is a legitimate legal challenge to questionable documentation. Brennan turned to the review board. I'm not asking you to rule on the validity of the inheritance. I'm simply requesting that you postpone this entry's participation until the legal questions are resolved. Patricia Wentworth exchanged glances with her colleagues. Mr. Cole, do you have any response? Marcus stood and approached the table. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. 12 years of combat had taught him how to function under pressure. Judge Wentworth. I have here the original documentation proving my ownership of the Mercedes. He set his folder on the table. Walter Cole's will notarized in 1995 and recorded with the county clerk. The title transfer dated 3 months ago. Insurance documents showing continuous coverage since 1968. And most importantly, a letter from Walter Cole himself written in 1968 explaining why he hid the collection and who he intended to inherit it. He pulled out the letter Chief Patterson had given him. This letter specifically describes me. Not by name, but by circumstance. A soldier who came home broken. A man raising his daughter alone. Someone strong enough to fight back against the people who destroyed me. Walter Cole waited 60 years for someone to fulfill this description. I'm that someone. Touching. Brennan's voice dripped with sarcasm. But a 60-year-old letter doesn't prove legal ownership. No, but this does. Marcus pulled out his final document. An affidavit from Margaret Brennan, your mother Howard, sworn and notarized 3 weeks ago, confirming that Walter Cole's estate documents are genuine, confirming that your family has been attempting to steal his property for 60 years, and confirming that you personally ordered the destruction of the Mercedes 5 weeks ago in an attempt to prevent us from competing today. The room went silent. Brennan's face drained of color. That's impossible. My mother would never, Your mother is dying. Cancer. She wanted to make things right before she goes. Marcus looked directly at Howard Brennan. She told me everything. The bribes, the arson, the attempted murder. She kept records for 30 years waiting for someone to use them. This is slander. I'll sue you into oblivion. Go ahead. Every document is certified. Every allegation is supported by evidence. Marcus turned back to the review board. Judge Wentworth, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for a fair chance to compete. Walter Cole spent 60 years preserving this car for this exact purpose. My team spent 5 weeks rebuilding it after Mr. Brennan's people destroyed it. We've earned the right to be here. Patricia Wentworth studied the documents for a long moment. Then she looked at Howard Brennan. Mr. Brennan, the documentation Mr. Cole has presented appears to be in order. Unless you have additional evidence supporting your complaint, I'm inclined to dismiss it. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about the integrity of this competition. Her voice hardened. And I'm deeply troubled by the allegations contained in Mrs. Brennan's affidavit. If even half of what she claims is true, you should be facing criminal charges, not filing complaints about documentation. This is outrageous. I'll contact your supervisors. I'll have this entire competition investigated. You're welcome to try. Patricia Wentworth closed her folder. Entry 247 is approved. Mr. Cole, please have your vehicle in the staging area by 2 p.m. for preliminary inspection. Thank you, Judge Wentworth. Marcus gathered his documents and walked toward the door. As he passed Brennan, the other man grabbed his arm. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Marcus pulled free. You've lost Howard. You just don't know it yet. He walked out of the conference room and didn't look back. The staging area was a controlled chaos of gleaming automobiles and nervous owners. Marcus arrived at 1:47 p.m. with the Mercedes carefully positioned on a custom transport dolly surrounded by his team. Jimmy Rodriguez had changed into clean coveralls, his prosthetic arm polished to a shine. Derek Washington stood alert and focused the hollow look gone from his eyes. Anna Kowalski wore a dress she'd made herself elegant and professional. Chief Patterson sat in his wheelchair, a flag lapel pin on his jacket, and tears already forming in his eyes. And Emma, wearing a miniature Heritage Center polo shirt, bounced with excitement that couldn't be contained. Daddy, look at all these cars. I see them, baby girl. Our Mercedes is the prettiest. I think you might be biased. I'm not biased. I'm correct. The competition entries surrounded them. A pristine Porsche 550 Spider from Germany, accompanied by a team of 6 specialists in matching uniforms. A Ferrari 250 GT from Italy, its red paint gleaming like fresh blood. A Jaguar E-Type from England, long and sleek and impossibly elegant. And the Mercedes, silver paint catching the California sunlight. Gullwing doors waiting to rise. 60 years of history ready to be vindicated. Mr. Cole, a young man with a clipboard, approached. Your entry has been assigned position 23 for the preliminary inspection. Please have the vehicle in place by 2:30. We'll be ready. The team worked in efficient silence, positioning the Mercedes, checking every detail one final time. Jimmy ran his hand along the fender with something like reverence. Derek examined the engine bay with professional pride. Anna adjusted the interior lighting to show off her perfect stitching. At 2:28, the judges approached. Patricia Wentworth led the group, followed by Der Heinrich Mueller and two additional specialists Marcus didn't recognize. They moved with the deliberate precision of experts who had spent lifetimes evaluating automotive perfection. "Mr. Cole?" Patricia Wentworth nodded in greeting. "We meet again. Judge Wentworth. Let's see what you've brought us." The inspection began with the exterior. Dr. Mueller circled the car slowly, his eyes missing nothing. He examined the paint from multiple angles, checking for consistency, depth, authenticity. He measured panel gaps with a precision tool. He inspected chrome trim and rubber seals and glass edges. "The paintwork is exceptional." His German accent was thick but approving. "Original color specification?" "Yes, sir. DB 180 silver with red interior, exactly as it left the factory in 1955. "And the restoration history?" "The car was preserved, not restored. Walter Cole maintained it in original condition for 60 years. We performed a mechanical overhaul in preparation for showing, but the original finishes were preserved wherever possible." Dr. Mueller made notes on his clipboard. Then he moved to the engine bay. Marcus held his breath. This was where the damage from Brennan's sabotage had been most severe. They'd rebuilt the engine completely in 5 weeks, a feat that should have been impossible. Dr. Mueller spent 10 full minutes examining every component. Valve covers, wiring harnesses, fuel injection system, spark plugs, oil lines. "Interesting." He looked up at Marcus. "The engine appears to have been recently rebuilt." "It was. We had to perform a complete overhaul due to damage. Vandalism. 5 weeks ago, someone contaminated the engine with sand." Dr. Mueller's eyebrows rose. "And you rebuilt it in 5 weeks." "We had motivation." The judge exchanged glances with Patricia Wentworth. Something passed between them that Marcus couldn't read. "Who performed the mechanical work?" Jimmy Rodriguez stepped forward. "I did, sir, with assistance from Mr. Washington here." Dr. Mueller studied Jimmy's prosthetic arm. "You did this work with one arm." "One arm is all I need." Jimmy's voice was steady. "I lost the other one in Iraq, but I didn't lose my knowledge or my skill." "Clearly not." Dr. Mueller made more notes. "The machining on the cylinder head is exceptional, professional grade, perhaps better than factory specifications." "We had help from Miguel Santos. He was the master machinist at the Steelton Steelworks before it closed." "The steel mill in Pennsylvania, I've heard of it. Legendary precision work." "Miguel learned from his father, who learned from his father. 3 generations of craftsmen." The inspection continued for another hour. Interior leather examined stitch by stitch. Glass inspected for authenticity. Undercarriage checked for rust and wear. Documentation reviewed page by page. Finally, Patricia Wentworth closed her folder. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. We'll complete our preliminary assessments tonight and post the competition schedule tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. What can we expect? You can expect fair judging based on the quality of your restoration and the authenticity of your documentation." She paused. "But between us, I've been doing this for 40 years. Your car is exceptional, your story is remarkable, and your team?" She looked at Jimmy, at Derek, at Anna, at Chief Patterson in his wheelchair. "Your team is exactly what Walter Cole would have wanted." "Thank you, Judge Wentworth." "Don't thank me yet. You still have to win." The schedule posted at 8:03 a.m. the next morning. Class E4 European Sports Cars 1954-1960. Judging begins at 10 a.m. Final presentation at 3 p.m. Marcus gathered his team in the parking lot behind their hotel. "This is it. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next 7 hours." He looked at each face in turn. "Jimmy, Derek, you're on mechanical presentation. Make sure every component is spotless. Anna, final interior check. Chief, you're our historian. If the judges ask questions about Walter's original vision, you answer them." "What about me?" Emma's voice was determined. "You're our secret weapon." "What does that mean?" "It means you stay close and you be yourself. You remind everyone why we're really here." The morning passed in a blur of activity. Final polishing. Last-minute adjustments. 100 small details checked and rechecked. At 9:47 a.m., they positioned the Mercedes in the judging area. Around them, the competition was doing the same. The German team with their Porsche moving with military precision. The Italian collectors with their Ferrari speaking rapid Italian and gesturing dramatically. The British restorer with his Jaguar quietly confident in his work. Nervous, Sarah Chen appeared beside Marcus. Terrified. Good, means you care. I've been in firefights that felt less dangerous than this. Firefights have clear enemies. Competition has judges. Sarah smiled. Same stakes, though. Everything on the line. At 10:00 a.m. exactly the judging began. The process was methodical, thorough, and excruciating. 3 judges rotated through each entry, spending 20 to 30 minutes with each car. They asked questions. They took measurements. They photographed details. They made notes that the competitors couldn't see. When they reached the Mercedes at 11:23 a.m., Marcus felt his heart rate spike. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." Patricia Wentworth led the group. "Let's see how she looks in the California sunshine." The questions came rapid fire. Engine specifications, restoration philosophy, documentation provenance, historical significance. Chief Patterson answered the history questions with the authority of someone who'd lived it. Walter Cole designed the underground vault in 1968 specifically to preserve this collection. He believed that automotive heritage was worth protecting even if it took decades for the world to understand. Why didn't he show the cars publicly? Because powerful people wanted to take them, because the town rejected his vision, because sometimes the only way to protect something beautiful is to hide it until the world is ready. The judges exchanged glances. "And the Heritage Center you're planning?" Dr. Mueller asked. "Training facility for veterans and displaced workers, teaching traditional restoration skills, creating jobs that can't be shipped overseas." Marcus stepped forward. Walter Cole's dream wasn't about cars, it was about people, about giving broken warriors something to believe in. "Like your team, exactly like my team." The inspection concluded at 11:58 a.m. The judges moved on to the next entry, leaving Marcus and his team to wait. The waiting was the hardest part. At 2:47 p.m., the announcer called all participants to the main stage. Marcus stood with his team as hundreds of spectators gathered around the 18th green. The Pacific Ocean sparkled in the distance. The California sun cast everything in golden light. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the judging ceremony for the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance." The announcements began with specialty awards. Best Engine Bay went to a meticulously prepared Ferrari. Most Elegant Design honored a stunning Bugatti from a private collection. Then came the class awards. In Class E4 European sports cars 1954 to 1960, Marcus felt Emma grab his hand. Third place goes to the 1956 Porsche 550 Spyder entered by the Stuttgart Automotive Museum. The German team accepted their award with professional grace. Third place at Pebble Beach was an achievement most restorers never experienced. Second place goes to the 1957 Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta entered by the Rossi collection. The Italian team looked stunned. They'd expected to win. Their car was magnificent, but second place meant someone else had beaten them. And first place in Class E4? Marcus stopped breathing. Representing an extraordinary achievement in community-based restoration and veteran rehabilitation. The words seemed to come from very far away. The 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing entered by the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center of Steelton, Pennsylvania. Emma screamed. Jimmy collapsed against Derek, who caught him with both arms. Anna began to cry. Chief Patterson lifted both fists toward the sky and shouted something that might have been Walter's name. Marcus stood frozen, unable to process what he'd just heard. They'd won their class, against international competition, against professional restoration teams with unlimited budgets and decades of experience, against everything the Brennans had thrown at them. They'd won. "Daddy?" Emma tugged at his hand. "Daddy, we have to go get the trophy." Right, yes, the trophy. He walked to the stage on legs that didn't feel like his own. Patricia Wentworth presented the Crystal Award with a smile that suggested she'd known all along. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole." Thank you so much." "But we're not done." Her smile widened. "Please return to your position. We have one more announcement." Marcus walked back to his team, the class trophy clutched in his hands, confusion and hope warring in his chest. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year's competition has featured exceptional entries in every category. Our judges faced difficult decisions at every level." The announcer paused dramatically. "But one entry stood above all others, not just in technical excellence, but in its embodiment of everything this competition represents." Marcus felt Sarah grab his arm. "The Best of Show Award at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance goes to..." The pause stretched forever. "The 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing from the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center." The world exploded. Emma threw herself into Marcus's arms. Jimmy was crying openly now, tears streaming down his weathered face. Derek stood straight and tall for the first time since Marcus had met him, his shoulders squared, his eyes clear. Anna was hugging everyone within reach. Chief Patterson had his hands pressed over his heart, his lips moving in what might have been a prayer. Sarah Chen was documenting everything, her phone camera capturing moments that would define the rest of their lives. And somewhere in the crowd, Marcus glimpsed Howard Brennan standing alone, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. They'd won. Not just their class, not just a trophy. Best of show. The highest honor at the most prestigious classic car competition in the world. The award ceremony continued, but Marcus barely heard it. He accepted the Best of Show trophy in a daze, said words he couldn't remember, shook hands with judges and competitors and spectators who wanted to congratulate the team that had come from nowhere to claim the ultimate prize. When it was finally over, when the crowds had dispersed and the sun was setting over Monterey Bay, Marcus found himself alone with his team beside the Mercedes. "We did it," Derek's voice held wonder. "We actually did it. Walter did it." Chief Patterson's thin voice cracked with emotion. 60 years of planning, 60 years of waiting, and it finally worked. It wasn't just Walter. Jimmy looked at each team member in turn. It was all of us. Every hour, every sacrifice, every moment we refused to give up. It was Emma. Anna knelt beside the little girl who'd inspired them all. "You believed when the rest of us doubted." Emma shook her head. "I just knew what Mom would say. She'd say that Daddy never gives up. She'd say that warriors fight until they win." Marcus pulled his daughter close. "Your mom would be so proud of you." "She's watching. I know she is." The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, waves crashed against the rocks of Pebble Beach. The Mercedes gleamed in the fading light, 60 years of history vindicated at last. "What happens now?" Derek asked. "Now we go home." Marcus looked toward the east, toward Pennsylvania, toward Steelton. "And we build what Walter always dreamed of, a place for people like us, veterans, workers, broken souls who need something to believe in. The Heritage Center. The Heritage Center, and anyone who tries to stop us." Marcus smiled grimly. "They've seen what we can do now, let them try." His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your victory. This isn't over. Howard Brennan." Marcus read the message, then deleted it without responding. Brennan was wrong. It was over. The Mercedes had won. The team had proven itself. Walter's vision was finally within reach. And nothing Howard Brennan could do would change that. The convoy left California at 6 a.m. the next morning, 2 trophies secured in the transport truck beside the Mercedes, a team transformed by victory, and a future brighter than any of them had dared to imagine. 3,000 miles to Steelton. 3,000 miles to home. 3,000 miles to the beginning of everything Walter Cole had dreamed. The drive back took 4 days. Marcus insisted on a slower pace this time, stopping at rest areas and roadside diners, letting the team recover from months of exhaustion. At a truck stop in Nevada, Jimmy Rodriguez called his ex-wife for the first time in 3 years. "I wanted you to know I'm doing something that matters. Finally." At a diner in Colorado, Derek Washington wrote a letter to his mother, telling her he'd found a reason to keep living. At a gas station in Kansas, Anna Kowalski called her children and told them Mommy was coming home with something to show them. And at a rest area in Missouri, Chief Patterson asked Marcus to stop for a moment. "I need to tell Walter." "Tell him what?" "That we won. That his cars found their purpose, that everything he sacrificed was worth it." Marcus watched as the old man wheeled himself to a quiet spot overlooking a Missouri cornfield, bowed his head, and spent 15 minutes talking to someone who wasn't there. When he returned, his eyes were red, but his face was peaceful. He knows now. He finally knows. They crossed into Pennsylvania on the 4th day, passing familiar landmarks that looked different somehow. Brighter, more hopeful. The Steelton town limit sign appeared at 3:47 p.m., and behind it, blocking the road, stood a crowd. Marcus slowed the transport truck. "What's happening?" "I think they're waiting for us," Sarah's voice held wonder. The crowd was huge. Hundreds of people lining both sides of the road, holding signs and American flags, cheering and applauding as the convoy approached. "Welcome home, heroes." Steelton proud. Walter's dream lives. Marcus stopped the truck and stepped out. The cheering intensified. People he recognized. Neighbors, customers, the waitress from the diner, the pharmacist who'd let him pay in installments, teachers from Emma's school, workers who'd lost their jobs when the mill closed. Mayor Patricia Holloway pushed through the crowd, her official sash draped across her chest. "Mr. Cole, on behalf of the town of Steelton, I want to welcome you home and congratulate you on your victory at Pebble Beach. Thank you, Mayor. We've watched the news coverage, we've seen the interviews, and we've had some discussions about the future of this community. She glanced toward the crowd. The town council has voted unanimously to support the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center. Whatever you need. Permits, zoning, tax incentives, Steelton is behind you. Marcus looked at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd ignored him for 5 years, who'd let their children bully his daughter, who'd stood by while the Brennans squeezed him out of business. Why now? Because you showed us something we'd forgotten. Mayor Holloway's voice softened. You showed us that we could still win, that our town still had something to offer, that the skills and traditions we thought were dead could still matter. She extended her hand. We should have supported you from the beginning. We're sorry we didn't, but we're here now. Marcus looked at his team, at Jimmy, who'd finally found a place where his one arm was enough, at Derek, who'd stopped wanting to die, at Anna, whose grandmother's skills had been validated on the world's biggest stage, at Chief, who'd finally kept his 60-year-old promise, at Emma, who'd never doubted that her daddy would win. Okay, Marcus said finally. Let's build something together. The crowd erupted in cheers, and somewhere in the distance in a mansion on the hill overlooking Steelton, Howard Brennan watched through binoculars and felt everything he'd worked for slipping away, but that was a problem for another day. Today belonged to the victors. The celebration lasted 3 days. Marcus lost track of how many hands he shook, how many congratulations he received, how many people told him they'd always believed in him, even though he knew most of them hadn't believed in anything except their own survival for years. On the 4th day, he woke at 5 a.m. in his small rental house and found Emma already awake sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook and colored pencils. What are you working on, baby girl? Plans for the Heritage Center. She held up her notebook. I drew where the cars should go and where the classrooms should be, and where we should put the cafeteria so the students don't have to go far for lunch. Marcus looked at his daughter's drawings. Childish but earnest, a 9-year-old's vision of what her father's dream might become. This is really good, Em. I want to help, for real, not just cheering and stuff. You already helped more than you know. I want to help more. Emma's jaw set with familiar determination. I want to learn how to fix cars like Jimmy and Derek. I want to know everything about the collection like Chief. I want to be part of this forever. Marcus sat down across from her. This is going to be your whole life, isn't it? It already is? Emma looked up at him with Jessica's eyes. This is what we're supposed to do, Daddy. I knew it the first time you showed me the vault. Uncle Walter left us this because we're the ones who can make it real. When did you get so smart? I told you. I learned from you. The doorbell rang at 6:23 a.m. Marcus opened it to find Chief Patterson in his wheelchair, pushed by Derek Washington. Behind them stood Jimmy Rodriguez, Anna Kowalski, Miguel Santos, and Sarah Chen. Early morning for a social call. This isn't a social call, Chief's voice was urgent. We have a problem. They gathered in Marcus's small living room, bodies pressed together in a space designed for 2 people, not 8. What kind of problem? Sarah pulled out her tablet and showed Marcus a news article. Howard Brennan held a press conference last night. He's announcing a lawsuit against the Heritage Center Trust, claiming Walter's insurance policy is invalid because the collection was hidden from assessors for 60 years. He can't do that. The trust documents are airtight. He's not trying to win in court. He's trying to delay. Sarah scrolled to another article. The lawsuit will tie up the insurance funds for months, maybe years. Without that money, we can't build the Heritage Center. We can't hire staff. We can't even maintain the collection properly. He's trying to starve us out. Exactly. Marcus looked at his team, exhausted, triumphant, and now facing another battle they shouldn't have to fight. How much money do we have? The prize money from Pebble Beach, $500,000. Sarah pulled up a spreadsheet. It's enough to operate for maybe 6 months if we're careful, but construction on the Heritage Center would cost $10 million minimum. What about donations? We've received some, maybe $200,000 total, but donors are hesitant to commit until the lawsuit is resolved. So Brennan wins by making people afraid to support us. That's his strategy. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. The sun was rising over Steelton, painting the old mill smokestacks in shades of gold. We need to go public, not just with our story, with everything. The documents Margaret Brennan gave us. The evidence of 60 years of corruption. All of it. If we do that, Brennan will escalate. He'll throw everything he has at us. He's already doing that. Marcus turned to face his team. The only way to beat a bully is to take away his power, and bullies get their power from secrecy, from people being afraid to speak up. You want to expose him. I want to destroy him. The press conference was held at 10 a.m. in the parking lot of Walter's garage exactly 1 week after their return from Pebble Beach. Every news outlet in Pennsylvania was there. National networks had sent crews. The story of the Navy SEAL and the hidden car collection had captured the public imagination, and now that story was about to get even more explosive. Marcus stood at a makeshift podium surrounded by his team, facing a wall of cameras and microphones. Thank you for coming. I have a statement to read, and then I'll take questions. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. For 60 years, the Brennan family has controlled this town through corruption, intimidation, and fraud. They bribed government officials. They destroyed businesses that threatened their monopoly. They attempted to murder my great-uncle Walter Cole in 1968 because he refused to sell them his land. The crowd of reporters erupted in questions, but Marcus continued. I have documentation proving every allegation I'm about to make. Bank records showing bribes paid to county officials. Witness statements from people who were afraid to speak for decades. An affidavit from Margaret Brennan, Howard Brennan's own mother, confirming that her husband ordered the arson attack that destroyed 3 of Walter Cole's cars and was intended to kill him. He held up a thick folder. This folder contains copies of everything. We're providing it to the FBI, the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and every news organization present today. The original documents are in a secure location that Howard Brennan will never find. Marcus looked directly into the main camera. Mr. Brennan, you've spent your entire life destroying people who couldn't fight back. Walter Cole couldn't fight back because he was alone. The workers at the steel mill couldn't fight back because they needed their jobs. The small business owners couldn't fight back because you controlled their credit and their permits. He paused. I'm not alone. I'm not afraid. And I will fight you until one of us is finished. The questions came like artillery fire. Mr. Cole, do you have evidence that Howard Brennan personally ordered the recent vandalism of your Mercedes? I have a sworn statement from a former Brennan employee who witnessed the orders being given. Are you afraid of retaliation? I spent 12 years in combat zones. Howard Brennan doesn't scare me. What do you want to happen to the Brennan family? I want justice for Walter Cole, for Elizabeth Harmon, for everyone the Brennans have hurt over 6 decades. Marcus looked at Chief Patterson. And for Robert Patterson, who watched his best friend's dream destroyed and spent 50 years waiting for someone to make it right. The press conference lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Marcus's phone was flooded with messages, interview requests, donation offers, letters of support from veterans across the country who'd seen the coverage and wanted to help, and one text from an unknown number. You've made a very serious mistake. This ends now, HB. Marcus showed the text to Sarah. Should we be worried? We should be careful. She looked at the crowd still milling around the garage. But I think Brennan just discovered something he didn't expect. What's that? That bullies only have power until someone decides not to be bullied anymore. The FBI arrived in Steelton 3 days later. Special Agent Patricia Morrison led a team of 6 investigators, all of them carrying boxes of documents and looking like they intended to stay for a while. Mr. Cole. Morrison shook his hand in the parking lot of Walter's garage. Your documentation is impressive. My team has been reviewing it for 72 hours, and we believe there's sufficient evidence to open a formal investigation into the Brennan family's activities. What does that mean for us? It means the lawsuit against your trust will likely be stayed pending the outcome of our investigation. It also means you should be prepared for things to get uncomfortable before they get better. Uncomfortable how, Doc? The Brennans have connections, political allies, business partners who won't want to see them fall. Morrison lowered her voice. You've kicked a hornet's nest, Mr. Cole. The hornets are going to be angry. I've dealt with angry hornets before. Not like these. These wear suits and carry lawyers instead of stingers. She handed him her card. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me directly, day or night. Thank you, Agent Morrison. Thank me when this is over. The first sign of trouble came at 2:47 p.m. Marcus was in Walter's office reviewing construction plans when Jimmy burst through the door. You need to see this. They rushed to the main garage where Derek was standing guard over a delivery truck that had just arrived. This isn't what we ordered. Derek pointed at the boxes being unloaded. These are parts for a 1972 Chevrolet. We didn't order anything for a Chevrolet. Marcus examined the shipping label. Who sent this? The label says it's from our supplier in Detroit. But I called them. They never shipped anything. Someone's trying to fill our garage with junk. That's not the worst part. Jimmy handed Marcus a clipboard. The delivery guy says we owe $17,000 Kiat. If we don't pay, they'll file a lien against the property. We didn't order this. Try explaining that to a collection agency. Marcus felt the familiar cold settling in his chest. Brennan was fighting back. Not with direct attacks this time, but with 1,000 small cuts designed to drain their resources and their energy. Send it back. Refuse delivery. Already tried. The driver says his company doesn't accept returns. We either pay or they sue. Then we sue them first. Marcus pulled out his phone. Sarah, I need you at the garage, now, and bring a lawyer if you can find one. The delivery dispute took 3 days to resolve. They won eventually, but not before spending $8,000 in legal fees and countless hours that should have gone to building the Heritage Center. The next attack came a week later. Anna Kowalski's apartment was broken into while she was at work. Nothing was stolen, but her grandmother's leather-working tools were destroyed. Every needle bent, every awl snapped, every piece of heirloom equipment that had been passed down through 3 generations ruined beyond repair. Anna stood in her apartment, tears streaming down her face, holding the remains of tools her grandmother had used at the Mercedes factory in Stuttgart. These were irreplaceable, her voice cracked. My grandmother brought them from Germany in 1958. They survived everything, the ocean crossing, 3 moves, 40 years of use. She collapsed into a chair. Why would anyone do this? Marcus knew why, and he knew who. We'll find you new tools. There are no new tools like these. They don't make them anymore. The craftsman who made them died decades ago. Anna looked up at him with devastated eyes. Brennan knew exactly what to take. He knew these were my connection to my grandmother, to everything she taught me. He's trying to break us, one person at a time. It's working. No? Marcus knelt beside her. It's not working. Because you're still here. Your skills are still in your hands, not in the tools. Your grandmother didn't teach you to rely on equipment. She taught you to create beauty with whatever you had. I can't do the stitching without the proper needles. Then we'll find proper needles. Somewhere in the world there are craftsmen still making traditional tools. We'll find them. We'll buy them. And when you're ready, you'll teach the next generation just like your grandmother taught you. Anna wiped her eyes. You really believe that... I believe in you. I believe in this team. And I believe that Howard Brennan has no idea what he's started. The attacks continued for 3 months. Derek Washington's truck was vandalized. Sugar in the gas tank. 4 new tires slashed. Traitor, spray painted on the door. Miguel Santos received threatening phone calls at 3 a.m. Heavy breathing. No words. Just the message that someone knew where he lived and when he was alone. Jimmy Rodriguez was denied service at 3 different auto parts stores in the region. No explanation given. Just doors closing in his face. Chief Patterson's wheelchair was stolen from the porch of his house. They found it a week later dumped in a creek rusted beyond repair. Each attack was carefully calibrated. Nothing quite serious enough for criminal charges. Nothing that could be directly traced to Brennan. Just a steady drumbeat of harassment designed to wear them down, to make them question whether the fight was worth it, to convince them that surrender was easier than resistance. But something unexpected happened. The community pushed back. When Derek's truck was vandalized, 6 neighbors showed up the next morning with tools and paint and new tires. They fixed the damage in 4 hours and stood guard over his house for the next 2 weeks. When Miguel received the threatening calls, the VFW organized a phone tree. Veterans took turns staying at his house through the night, and the calls stopped. When Jimmy was denied service, 3 competing auto parts stores reached out to offer him accounts with unlimited credit and no questions asked. When Chief's wheelchair was stolen, a GoFundMe campaign raised $40,000 in 3 days. Enough for a state-of-the-art motorized chair with all-terrain capabilities. The town that had ignored Marcus Cole for 5 years was finally fighting back. The turning point came on a Thursday afternoon in October, exactly 4 months after the Pebble Beach victory. Marcus was meeting with construction contractors when Sarah burst into Walter's office. "Turn on the news, Channel 7, now!" He found the remote and clicked to the local station. Howard Brennan's face filled the screen, but not in a press conference. In a perp walk, hands cuffed behind his back, FBI agents on either side, walking into the federal courthouse in Pittsburgh. Breaking news this hour. Real estate developer Howard Brennan has been arrested on federal charges including racketeering, conspiracy, and fraud. Sources tell Channel 7 that the investigation stemmed from documents provided by Brennan's own mother and corroborated by evidence gathered by Marcus Cole, the Navy SEAL veteran, whose classic car collection became the center of a months-long battle with the Brennan family. Marcus watched in silence as the news anchor detailed the charges. 63 counts, spanning 40 years of criminal activity, enough to put Brennan away for the rest of his life. The arrest follows a comprehensive FBI investigation that uncovered what agents describe as a systematic pattern of corruption, intimidation, and fraud dating back to the 1960s. Additional arrests are expected as the investigation continues. His phone rang. "Agent Morrison? You've seen the news? I'm watching it now. We've seized Brennan's assets, all of them. The lawsuits against your trust will be dismissed. You're clear to proceed with the Heritage Center." "What about his family?" "His son Tyler is being questioned but isn't currently a suspect. His wife filed for divorce this morning, and his mother—" Morrison paused. "Margaret Brennan passed away last night, peacefully in her sleep, but I'm told she saw the arrest warrant before she died." Marcus thought about the woman who'd found him in the church, who'd given him the documents that made all of this possible, who'd spent 30 years waiting for the courage to do what was right. She knew. She asked to be kept informed. We showed her the warrant at 6 p.m. She smiled, closed her eyes, and never woke up. Morrison's voice softened. "I like to think she was finally at peace." "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for not giving up. A lot of people would have taken the money and walked away." "I'm not a lot of people." "No, you're not." The construction began in November. Marcus stood in the parking lot of Walter's garage watching as bulldozers broke ground on the expansion that would transform the property into the American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center. $10 million in donations had poured in since Brennan's arrest. Veterans organizations, automotive collectors, corporate sponsors, ordinary people who'd seen the news coverage and wanted to be part of something meaningful. The federal government had seized the Brennan family's assets, and the courts had awarded a portion of those assets to the Heritage Center as restitution for 60 years of interference with Walter Cole's plans. Jimmy Rodriguez was named Director of Mechanical Training. His first class of 12 students would begin in January learning restoration techniques from a one-armed master who'd proven that disability was not inability. Derek Washington was named Director of Veteran Outreach. He'd spend his days visiting VA hospitals and military bases recruiting broken warriors who needed something to believe in. Anna Kowalski was named Director of Traditional Crafts. Her new tools had arrived from a craftsman in Germany who'd learned his trade from her grandmother's own teacher. The circle was complete. Chief Patterson was named Director Emeritus, a title he'd hold until his final breath. At 93 years old, he spent his days in the Heritage Center's lobby telling stories about Walter Cole to anyone who would listen, and Emma Cole, age 10, was named Junior Ambassador. Her official job was giving tours to visiting students. Her unofficial job was reminding everyone why they were really there. The grand opening was scheduled for May 15th, exactly 1 year after Marcus had first entered Walter's garage and found the hidden vault. On May 14th, the night before the ceremony, Marcus found himself alone in the underground collection. The vault looked different now. Brighter, more welcoming. The climate control still hummed and the cars still gleamed, but they no longer felt hidden. They felt ready. He walked among them slowly, stopping at each vehicle, remembering the first time he'd lifted each cover and discovered what waited beneath. The Ferrari 250 GTO, the Bugatti Type 57 Atlantic, the Shelby Daytona prototype, the Jaguar E-Type, and the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing, silver paint catching the fluorescent light. Gullwing doors closed like folded wings, the car that had started everything. "I thought I'd find you down here." He turned to see Emma standing at the base of the stairs. "Couldn't sleep." Too excited. She walked toward him, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. "Tomorrow's the big day. Tomorrow's the beginning." The beginning of what? The next 60 years. Marcus put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Walter spent his whole life building this. Now it's our turn to make it grow. Emma leaned against him. "Do you think Mom knows what we did?" "I think she's proud of you." "I think she's proud of both of us." Emma looked up at him. "Daddy, I've been thinking." "About what?" "About what Uncle Walter wrote in his letter? About some treasures being meant to heal wounds, not fill pockets." She paused. "I think I understand now. The cars aren't really the treasure." "What's the treasure?" "The people, the team, the veterans who'll learn here, the workers who'll build things that matter. Emma's voice grew stronger. The treasure is what happens when broken people find something worth fixing. Marcus felt his throat tighten. His daughter, 10 years old, understanding something that had taken him 34 years in a war to learn. You're absolutely right. I know, she grinned. I'm always right. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. They stood together in the vault, surrounded by 175 million worth of automotive history, and Marcus realized that Emma had put into words what he'd been struggling to articulate for months. The cars were beautiful. The cars were valuable. The cars were worth preserving. But they weren't the point. The point was Jimmy Rodriguez, who'd found his purpose after losing his arm. Derek Washington, who'd stopped wanting to die. Anna Kowalski, who'd connected with her grandmother across decades and oceans. Chief Patterson, who'd finally kept a 60-year-old promise. The point was the students who had come through these doors. Veterans returning from wars that hadn't ended. Workers displaced by factories that had closed. Young people who needed to believe that skill and dedication still mattered in a world that seemed increasingly disposable. The point was hope. Come on, Marcus said finally. We should try to get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. 5 more minutes. Okay, 5 more minutes. They walked among the cars together, father and daughter, and Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The grand opening ceremony began at 10 a.m. on May 15th. 3,000 people filled the Heritage Center grounds. Veterans in VFW caps and military dress uniforms. Workers from closed factories wearing their union pins. Students from local schools brought by buses. Families who'd driven from across the state to witness history being made. The Steelton High School band played the national anthem. The mayor gave a speech about community resilience. The governor sent a video message praising the Heritage Center as a model for veteran rehabilitation. And then it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the podium, looked out at the crowd, and felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. 1 year ago, he began, I was a struggling mechanic with a broken leg and an empty bank account. I couldn't afford lunch money for my daughter. I couldn't keep my business running. I couldn't see a future worth believing in. He paused. Then I inherited an old garage from an uncle I barely knew, and everything changed. Marcus spoke for 20 minutes. He told the story of Walter Cole. The dream, the betrayal, the 60 years of waiting, the hidden vault, the cars, the fight against the Brennans, and the team. I didn't do this alone. I couldn't have done this alone. The people standing behind me are the real heroes of this story. Jimmy Rodriguez, who proved that one arm is enough when your heart is in the work. Derek Washington, who found a reason to keep living. Anna Kowalski, who connected 3 generations through the art of her hands. Chief Patterson, who waited half a century to keep a promise to his best friend. He looked at Emma standing with the team, her face beaming with pride. And my daughter Emma, who never stopped believing when everyone else, including me, had doubts. The crowd applauded. But this isn't about us. This is about what comes next. The students who'll train here. The veterans who'll find purpose here. The skills that'll be preserved here for future generations. Marcus looked directly into the cameras. Walter Cole understood something that took me too long to learn. Some treasures aren't meant to be sold. They're meant to be shared. Some victories aren't about winning. They're about building something that outlasts you. He stepped back from the podium. The American Veterans Automotive Heritage Center is now officially open. The ribbon cutting was performed by Chief Patterson using a pair of scissors that had belonged to Walter Cole. When the ribbon fell, the old man began to cry. 60 years, he whispered. 60 years and it's finally real. Marcus put his hand on Chief's shoulder. You kept your promise. We kept it together. The crowd poured through the doors. Children pressed their faces against glass displays. Veterans stood before cars that reminded them of their youth. Workers examined tools they remembered using in factories that no longer existed. And in the center of it all, the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing sat in its place of honor, a plaque at its base telling the story of how a broken veteran and his daughter had brought it from a hidden vault to the world's most prestigious competition and back again. The first class of students enrolled in June, 12 veterans each carrying wounds visible and invisible, 3 former auto workers whose jobs had disappeared with their industry, 2 young people who'd dropped out of traditional education and needed something hands-on. Jimmy taught them about engines. Derek taught them about purpose. Anna taught them about craftsmanship. Chief taught them about history. And Marcus taught them about never giving up. By September, the first restoration project was complete. A 1967 Ford Mustang that had been donated as a rusted shell restored to show condition by students who'd never held a wrench before enrolling. They entered it in a regional competition, and they won. The second year brought 50 students. The third year brought 100. By the fifth year, the Heritage Center had a waiting list that stretched 18 months. Graduates went on to open their own restoration shops. Some returned as instructors. Others found jobs at museums and collections around the world, carrying the techniques they'd learned in Steelton to wherever craftsmanship was valued. Jimmy Rodriguez never took another drink. He walked his daughter down the aisle at her wedding, his prosthetic arm gleaming his eyes, clear and proud. Derek Washington met a woman at a veteran support group. They married in the Heritage Center's main hall, surrounded by cars and friends, and a future neither of them had expected to have. Anna Kowalski's children grew up in the workshops, learning the skills their great-grandmother had brought from Germany. The next generation was already preparing to carry the tradition forward. Chief Patterson died in his sleep at 97 years old, peacefully in the Heritage Center he'd waited his whole life to see. His funeral was attended by 3,000 people. The flag that draped his coffin had flown over the Capitol in Washington, a tribute arranged by grateful senators who'd heard his story. And Emma Cole graduated from high school as valedictorian. Her speech was about legacy, about purpose, about the importance of finishing what others had started. She enrolled in mechanical engineering at MIT in the fall. But she came home every summer to work in the Heritage Center to teach the next generation of students to continue what her father and her great-great-uncle had built. On the 10th anniversary of the Pebble Beach victory, Marcus stood alone in the underground vault. The cars were all still there, preserved, protected, waiting for the students who would learn from them, and the visitors who would be inspired by them. He was 44 years old now. The limp had gotten worse, but he'd stopped noticing. The nightmares had faded, replaced by dreams of Jessica that left him peaceful rather than grieving. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs. "Daddy, the ceremony's starting." "I'll be right up." She descended to join him. 20 years old now, tall and strong and brilliant, everything her mother would have been proud of. "You're thinking about Uncle Walter." "I'm thinking about all of them. Walter, Chief, your mom." Marcus looked around the vault. "I'm thinking about how much they sacrificed so we could be standing here. They'd be proud." "I hope so." "I know so." Emma took his hand. "Come on, you have a speech to give." They walked up the stairs together, father and daughter leaving the vault that had started everything and entering the building that had grown from it. 3,000 people waited outside. Veterans, students, graduates, community members, journalists from around the world who'd come to document the decade of the Heritage Center. Marcus walked to the podium one more time. 10 years ago, he said, "I stood in this parking lot and made a promise. I promised to build something that would outlast me. Something that would honor Walter Cole's vision and give broken people a place to become whole again." He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of students whose lives had been transformed, at veterans who'd found purpose, at families who'd found hope. "I think we kept that promise." The applause rose like thunder, and Marcus Cole, the Navy SEAL who'd been ridiculed for inheriting an old garage, stood in the California sunshine and understood at last what Walter had always known. Some treasures aren't measured in dollars. Some victories aren't won in competitions, and some legacies aren't about what you build, but about who you inspire to keep building after you're gone. The Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing still gleamed, and it came in its place of honor. Silver paint catching the light, the gullwing doors ready to rise, 60 years of history proven right at last. But the real treasure was standing all around it, broken people who'd learned to build, wounded warriors who'd found their purpose, a community that had remembered how to hope, and a little girl who'd grown into a woman ready to carry the torch forward out for the next 60 years. Walter Cole had waited a lifetime for this moment. He'd been right to wait. Some dreams are worth any amount of patience, any amount of sacrifice, any amount of faith. This was one of them, and it was only the beginning.